correct. That's correct.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Can you hear us? What are you doing, Ben?
I'm reading Jimmy Dore.
Oh.
Thank you, Frank.
All right. Word around town here. It may sound a little wonky. Can you guys hear us okay? I mean, it's going to sound real wonky when Ben starts singing. But... All right, everybody. Holler if you hear us before we get going here. Oh, what's that? Ben's got his Harold Washington. What?
Remember last night?
Oh, yeah. Hector, our good friend Hector, the guy who sent us the Harold Washington.
Yeah. Thank you, Hector. Thank you.
3D print. He was at the Hideout last night.
Hector brought us this, and Frank brought us this. Jimmy Dore, man. We made out like bandits.
Oh, we got some trolling going on early today, Ben.
The Jimmy Dore fans?
A gentleman by the name PC Amnesty, no one's favorite on the live stream chat. He asks, how many days does it take a Democrat to count a caucus?
Hey, man, I can't argue. Take your shots, PC, man. I can't argue with you. I mean, heck of a job, Iowa. Heck of a job.
Sounds like everybody can hear us just fine, so let's get going here. Your Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, February 5th. Is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and sponsoring this humble little program that we have. Unions like the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150, and the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace, Not Aerosmith Workers, Local 126 and District 8. A giant thank you to those unions for jumping on board, sponsoring this program. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, February 5th is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor.
Oh, the song of the day. I heard it on the car today.
Oh.
Panic in Detroit. Panic in Detroit. You know that song, D?
No.
It's the 70s. Forget it.
The Ben Joravsky Show starts now.
Yeah.
Panic in Chicago. It is Wednesday, February 5th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, it's our weekly visit with legendary Chicago journalist Monroe Anderson. We're talking all things what the hell happened in Iowa and the State of the Union address with WVON's The Buchanan and Seton Show's Atiba Buchanan. And it's the long-awaited return of Chicago political mastermind, Delmarie Cobb. And now your host, not a Chicago political mastermind. Pretty smart, though. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Maggie Wednesday. And here's why. So, D, I like to think I know absolutely everything there is to know about politics. But it turns out I don't. Let's go back in time, in the time machine to last night. We're at the hideout, the great debate. Carlos Ramirez Rosa representing Bernie Sanders, Brandon Johnson representing Elizabeth Warren. They're going at it. They're punch for punch. Great debate. It was very enlightening.
Loving
it was
the
fun.
sound effects.
How about the?
I mean,
did I ever? Can I give you my Clint Eastwood imitation? Anyway, so they're having this great debate, and at one point, Brandon Johnson says, just as an offhand comment, Brandon Johnson, thought I knew everything about politics, but I didn't realize they had many electoral college systems in Iowa. Now, we'd been talking about the utter debacle in Iowa, the fact that they're apparently incapable of counting votes, one of the most embarrassing displays of ineptitude I've ever seen. And I say this as a person who's watched Chicago elections since 1981, actually go back to the 70s and the 60s. So, yes, come on, Hoosiers, you really screwed that one up. Anyway, I'm like, many electoral colleges? What's he talking about? But I didn't want to say anything. It was a debate. I didn't want to interrupt the debaters. At the same point, I didn't want to admit to everybody in the room that I didn't know what he was talking about. But later, D. Later. So I took a look at the totals that were coming in. It was hard to keep track of the total because they released them in chunks. I think they're still only at 71%. Last I looked, it was like 71% of reported. Here we are on Wednesday. The election was Monday. Take your time, Iowa. No. The convention's in July. You have until July to figure out how many delegates everybody gets. Anyway, it's still at 71%. They're taking their time. And I took a look at the raw vote. Okay? Just like who voted for Bernie, who voted for Buttigieg. Okay? Those are the top two, all right? Bernie had 32,772 last I looked.
That's correct.
Thank you, Robert Mueller. And Mayor Pete at 31,458.
That's correct.
So one more time, Bernie. Mueller's really on his game today, man. Bernie, 32,772. Mayor Pete, 31,458. 32-31. Now, as I always point out, I am not Danny Biss. I am not a mathematician. It's true.
And who is?
Dan Biss, he is. Well, Ben, I ain't really good at math. But it is, I just also want to point out that I took and passed freshman year algebra at Evanston High School. Okay, it wasn't that easy, D. All right?
Well, I'm right there with you.
I struggled in that class.
Me too.
But one thing I learned in those advanced scholarly pursuits of mine of algebra at Evanston High School when I was a wee lad of 13 and 14, one thing I learned is 32 is more than 31. Again, don't call me Danny Biss, but 32, last I looked. And, just to be sure, D, I went around and asked a lot of experts, excuse me, Professor Mathematician, is 32 still more than 31? Oh, yes, it is. Did I miss something? Did they, change the rules and make 31 more than... No, they did not. So how could it be that Mayor Pete And Mayor Pete supporters are jumping for joy and doing backflips, claiming they won when Bernie has 32 and Mayor Pete has 31. Good question, right, D? Huh?
I think so.
So I called every expert I knew. I'm calling reporters and strategists, asking about the obscure tendencies of the Iowa Democratic Party and how they apportion delegates in such a way that if you get 32, you lose to the guy who got 31. And I'd like to say thank you to the one person who had the answer, the great Maggie Wonderly. I've talked about her before. She's coming on the show in a little while. Maggie, I hope you're listening right now. You truly know the game. She is Bernie Sanders. She'll say, Ben, don't. You're giving me too much credit. But she's really the brains of the Bernie Sanders delegate selection process here in the state of Illinois. As such, I turn to her whenever I have a question, which I have questions all the time, about the bizarre and Byzantine rules that regulate and govern the selection process. She helped the Bernie Sanders campaign put together their delegate slate, and she knows she goes to all the meetings. She studied the rule book. She knows absolutely everything about the delegate process. And I told her when I hung up with her, I said to her what I always say to Dee: give yourself a raise, Maggie, and take it out of petty cash. And she pointed out she's not getting any money because she's a volunteer. Well, then double your salary. Anyway, Maggie explained this to me. I said, Maggie, how come in the entire universe 32 is more than 31, except when it comes to apportioning delegates in the state of Iowa according to the rules of the Democratic Party? And bottom line, I'm going to try to make this as easy as understand as possible. The way she explained it to me is that in Iowa, delegates are proportioned according to what went down in the last elections in a precinct. So if a precinct had a big turnout in the last election, they get more delegates in this election. Now, on Monday in Iowa, the Bernie precincts, the precincts where Bernie was more popular, outperformed previous elections. So more Bernie people showed up this time than had in those precincts that had voted the last precincts. In the Buttigieg precincts, the results were not that good compared to the last elections, but because they were rewarded for past successes, Buttigieg gets more delegates. Are you following that? And even if you aren't, I'll just reduce it to this. In the state of Iowa, the incentive for doing better, for outperforming your opponent, is to be punished. I don't know what I'm more outraged when I think about the Democrats in Iowa, that they can't get their act together with the apps that count the votes, which is pretty outrageous. You should just go to a paper ballot. Oh, no, we're so sophisticated. We've got this app that's produced by a company called Shadow. Right off the bat, I wouldn't have hired that company. I don't know what I'm more outraged, that they don't have their act together with their apps, or that the rules they've set up punished the person who wins. The bottom line, my beloved Democratic Party always finds a way to lose even when they win. We got a great show today, everybody. Monroe Anderson will be here. Oh, my God, he is so fired up. He's ready to talk Iowa, Trump, impeachment, State of the Union speech, Rush Limbaugh. What else, Steve? What else is there out there for him to talk about?
There's a lot.
There's a lot. Atiba Buchanan will be in here. I'll tell you what, Atiba Buchanan knows the game. He probably knew about those bizarre Byzantine election rules in Iowa. I didn't ask him about them. He'll be ready to join the conversation on all the political news of the day. And then, as Dennis said, Delmarie Cobb, man, I cannot wait to hear what Delmarie Cobb has to say about the state of the Democratic Party and the State of the Union in the aftermath of Donald Trump's speech. So plenty of political talk ahead of us before we do any of that. The young man from Alton, he knows a thing or two about politics. Oh, yeah. They call him Dr. Doobie with the news.
Hey, everybody. Let's talk about what's happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon. And we begin with the Illinois governor. Today, Governor J.B. Pritzker is at Ridgely Elementary School in Springfield to make an announcement on statewide broadband expansion. Way to go, J.B. let's recap, shall we? So far this year, he's made a handful of visits outside the city. It was just reported that we've brought in $40 million of revenue since the legalization of recreational reefer in January. Last week, we learned that we have one hell of an Illinois State Fair summer lineup this year, featuring LL Cool J, Toby Keith, and Puddle of Mud. On Tuesday, he threw our neighboring state of Iowa under the bus for Illinois' own political gain, suggesting that Illinois should host the first Democratic primary of the election season. A brilliant idea. And today, a downstate public announcement making the rest of Illinois feel included. Hot damn, J.B. Pritzker is knocking it out of the park in 2020.
Take a chill pill, man.
Well, I will. I will take a chill pill.
He's
Mayor
just
Rahm.
jealous that you never said anything nice about him.
I was pretty excited there. Mayor Rahm called me out. Ben Joravsky, your thoughts?
Well, before I give you my thoughts, let me ask you your thoughts.
Okay.
Now, you just gave a glowing praise for one, Governor J.B. I'm not a perfect person, Pritzker. Does that mean that you officially regret having voted for Bob Dibur in the in the last election? In the 2018 primary? Go, young Dennis.
Not at all.
Even though JB, you love JB now?
I don't love him, but fan of what he's doing.
Kind of like him? Kind of sort of like him? Is that a JB tattoo? I see.
Hey.
Anyway, yeah. My thoughts. Go get him, JB.
All right, on to our Chicago mayor as we
Wait, hold on.
What?
Let me weigh in. Let me just say something.
Okay.
Now, I've been studying his proposal, like his suggestion that we move the primary, make Illinois #1 primary. And I believe you told me that your good friend Greg Hines from Cranes weighed in on this and said, yes, he endorses it. I did not see the column, okay? That's my old poker playing pal.
I'm this close to getting the interview with him on the show. So, yeah, Greg Hines. He said that.
He's known as know when to hold him, know when to fold him, Greg Hines. That Greg Hines?
Here we go.
On the other hand, Mark Brown of the Chicago Sun-Times said, no, not a good idea. Mark Brown has been a guest on the show, wrote a column in the Sun-Times. So suddenly, D, where do I go? I'm really... Greg Hines says, yay. Mark Brown says, nay. What do I do, D?
Oh, no.
Panic in Detroit. I got to say, I never thought these words would come out of my mouth. I'm with Greg Hines on this one, man. Bring it to Illinois.
Okay.
Mark Brown says we have winter in Illinois, so it's cold.
Ah.
Come on, Mark.
Okay.
Mark Brown, come on, man. You got to be tougher. The little snow's not going to threaten you. I'm cold.
That damn winter.
I'm like, yeah, we have winter, but somehow life goes on. All right, they plow the streets, they put salt down. I'm with Greg Hines in this one. As much as I love Mark Brown, I'm saying have the primary in Illinois. It's far more representative. And then Iowa. Indeed, think how much fun it would be. Like, just imagine if Illinois was the first primary state and we were the beneficiaries of all the love and attention that Iowa was. Like, Bernie would be in the studio, $27.
Ben, the studio's a little rough, but thanks for your support. Can I play the piano?
Yeah. And then I would do that close I do. Not only is he the senator from Vermont, not only is he a proud graduate of Brooklyn High School, but the man plays a mean piano.
Those who make it all the way to the end, they got that one.
So anyway, I'm with Greg Hines. Sorry, Mark, I love you dearly, but yeah, Greg, he's right on target. Bring the Illinois primary. Make Illinois the #1 state.
All right, I'm looking online here. Emails. Okay, Greg Hines hasn't canceled the interview yet. Way to go, Ben. Proud of you.
Got a new window.
Please stop.
There goes the interview.
We're getting there. Don't.
Great poker player, Greg Hines.
Okay, please stop. On to our Chicago mayor. As we mentioned and questioned both Tuesday and Friday, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot announced that she will attend President Donald Trump's State of the Union address. Well, that happened last night. The mayor was, in fact, in attendance, and the following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times and Lynn Sweet. Lynn Sweet spoke with Mayor Lightfoot.
Say that 10 times.
I'm telling you. Lynn Sweet spoke with Mayor Lightfoot about the speech and, more importantly, the question that we've all been asking, why the hell would you even want to attend? Trump's always trashing Chicago.
Yes.
Lightfoot had an explanation, all right? She told Lynn Sweet, quote, being here as a representative of the great city of Chicago gives me an opportunity to continue to be an ambassador for our city, to connect with federal representatives at every level. Lynn Sweet went on to say that Lightfoot is a serious serial networker. Ben, what do you think of that?
What?
She's there not so much for the Donald, but rather to connect with federal representatives.
All right, a lot to unpack here, okay? A lot to unpack. Let me unpack it.
Hey, we don't need sound effects.
That's me unpacking things. All right. So first of all, if you're there to network, more power to you. Network. I read the Lynn Sweet column, and she was networking, shaking hands, passing out cards, saying, I like you, you're good, hey, I love you. That's good. All right, fine. Networking's good for the city of Chicago. But that doesn't mean you have to go to the speech. At the part of the Lynn Sweet column that I found most interesting, I'll now read it to you. Lori Lightfoot said she was prepared to walk out as Trump scorched, quote, radical politicians, unquote, who provide sanctuary for, quote, criminal illegal aliens if he mentioned Chicago. Instead, he trashed the city of Chicago, but it's okay if he unfairly trashes California and New York. I don't get the logic there. I feel he should walk out if he unfairly trashes a Democratic state or Democratic city because they are Democratic states in Democratic cities. And he does that trashing in a State of the Union speech, which is supposed to be about how we're all in it together, how we're all one state, if you will, one union, if you will. I don't know why you would sit through and listen to him trash California. Well, that's okay. It's California. Let them walk out. So no, D, I don't buy it. As much as I appreciate Mayor Lori Lightfoot passing out a card or shaking hands or going to meetings, I feel she could have done that without sitting through that preposterous pageant that was set up by the Trump Re-Election Committee, which is of the so-called State of the Union speech. So no, I do not. Still, I stand by it. I do not think she should have showed up for that. And you know what? One more time, I'll say it. Not a lot of love for Eddie Johnson in this town, former police chief. Who was driven out of office after it emerged that he was kissing a woman other than his wife at a bar in Chicago. But he had the guts and the intelligence and the decency and the self-respect not to show up for Trump's speech when he came to town. So do like Eddie Johnson, Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Do like Eddie Johnson in terms of Donald Trump. So, yeah, that's my take on that.
All right, it looks like we're having some audio issues right now on the live stream. Guys, hang tight. I'll grab Brian. Brian! I'll grab him before we do our interview with Monroe Anderson, all right? But Lynn Sweet was on the mayor's trail all day. She met her at as Lightfoot finished a Congressional Black Caucus event where she met members of Congress, representatives of trade and social service organizations, and the Urban League chief. Before the speech on Media Row, the mayor got chummy with politicians like Democratic representative out of Florida and ex-President Bill Clinton's Health and Humane Services Secretary Donna Shalala, Democratic senator out of Connecticut Chris Murphy, and I'm still not sure if this is passive aggressiveness or not. Democratic Representative Bobby Scott of Virginia walked by. He asked Lightfoot, "How's your school system doing?" That was it. Not sure what that means.
Yeah, I read that too. I know you're in the middle, but can we just pause to think about that? Like, was Bobby Scott being a jerk? You know what I mean? It's kind of a rough time for the school system. I'm not making light of things. There's a sexual harassment scandal erupting at Lincoln Park High School as we speak. I'm not sure Bobby Scott would know that's going on. And at the same time, follow me this, people. The gentleman who's in charge, the inspector general who's in charge of investigating such episodes, like alleged sexual harassment scandals, had to step down after he was embroiled in a harassment scandal. So the guy who's in charge of investigations just stepped down. I don't know who's going to do the investigation. So yeah, it's not a really great time for Chicago public schools. So I don't know if Bobby Scott was aware of that when he asked that question. I don't know if he was being a wise guy or if he, it's sort of like saying, how's your day today? Like today when I was walking through the hallways of the Chicago Sun-Times, people, hey, how's the day today? How are you doing today? All right. It's just like a general nice thing. They didn't get specific. How's the show today? They didn't get specific. Bobby Scott got really specific. So kind of wondering, is this guy a jerk?
It's proven my theory once again. You just can't trust somebody with a first name as a last name. Bobby Scott.
First name is a last name. You mean a last name is a first name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just don't trust him.
You've been hanging around me so long, you're starting to get dyslexia.
I know. Not helping me here. All right. Lightfoot was invited to the event by Illinois U.S. Representative Robin Kelly. The two, along with fellow female House Democrats, wore all white to the speech. Statement. And for those wondering, she bought the suit online from Macy's.com. I know everybody was wondering that one.
All right. Let me just take apart this. This is very important. I want to make sure we get it right. We're not like the state of Iowa. We get things right. State of Iowa, apparently, 31 beats 32. That doesn't work in the Ben Joravsky show. All right. So Lori Lightfoot was not wearing a white suit, but she owns a white suit. Okay, just get this straight. And the suit she purchased, I learned this. I got her tailor. She has her tailor, a custom tailor, Richard Bennett. There's a shout out to Richard Bennett, her custom tailor. These things I learned while reading the daily newspaper, D. So just so you know, Lori Lightfoot was not wearing a white suit, but she has a white suit. And if she had to wear one, she could have worn one.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah, I just wanted to point everything out to make sure we get it correct and we'd be accurate on the Ben Joravsky show.
That's good. Accuracy right here on the Ben Joravsky show. And as far as the mayor's thoughts on the State of the Union address itself, Lori Lightfoot was not impressed.
Should have walked out. Shouldn't have been there in the first place.
All right, we got audio back, I think, guys. Holler if you can hear us okay.
That's because Brian Ernst is in this studio.
I'm telling you, he doesn't play around.
I'll tell you what, folks. I said this yesterday. I'll repeat it. If Brian Ernst had been in the state of Iowa Monday, that wouldn't have happened.
He actually did say that. Brian
Ernst would have said, "Excuse me, fellas, I know a thing or two about apps. Did I tell you I was a millennial?" He'd have fixed that app. All right? Next, in 2024, we're going to send Brian Ernst down to Iowa, and that'll take care of that. Now maybe Brian Ernst someday can explain to me how the great state of Iowa says that Pete Buttigieg won when he got 31 votes and Bernie Sanders lost when he got 32 votes. I'd like to hear any mathematician explain that one.
Brian. All right, I think we got audio. Yeah, all right.
We owe it all to Brian Ernst. Hey, Iowa, his name is Brian Ernst, and he's right here in Chicago.
I think I got big old winter boots on. It's going to snow today, so I think my big old Hulk Hogan big booted thing. Sorry, guys. All right.
Oh, you kicked it with your boot?
Yeah. Gave the old Hulkster big boot there.
Oh, my God.
All right.
Thanks, Brian.
The mayor was not impressed.
No, she's impressed with Brian Ernst, that's for sure.
Well, that's obvious, all right? She knows Brian. Lori Lightfoot was not impressed with the State of the Union address. Oh, no. Lightfoot said the address amounted to a, quote, campaign speech that was a race to the bottom. Then Lightfoot said she was prepared to walk out as Trump scorched, quote, radical politicians who provide sanctuary for, quote, criminal illegal aliens if he mentioned Chicago.
Well, this is the point I made earlier in the show. I don't know why it's acceptable to sit through Trump trashing California and New York with falsehoods, but somehow it's not acceptable if you're Chicago. I guess I'm from Chicago, so I'm not going to walk out if he trashes California. That's the mayor of Los Angeles' job. Oh, apparently the mayor of Los Angeles wasn't there. By the way, for 10 trivia points, D, who is the mayor of Los Angeles?
The mayor of Los Angeles?
Yes.
I mean, it's got to be Ice Cube.
Eric Garcetti.
Cool. You're cool.
But I don't know who the mayor of San Francisco has a name. Frank, who's the mayor of San Francisco? He's got his last name comes first name, one of those things.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Anyway, I used to know. This is a confession time. I used to know the names of the mayors of every major city in the country. That's how much of a geek I was. Back in the day, I knew them all. John Lindsay, New York City.
You don't have to admit these things.
Frank Rizzo, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Yeah, I was really weird, folks.
Yeah, so if Trump mentioned Chicago, Lightfoot was out of there. But he slammed New York and California. She's like, all right, I'll stay.
Yeah, I'll stay. Well, I don't like California much either. So, I don't know. You're either all in it together or you're not. Oh, it's okay. Just, Cuomo can handle New York. De Blasio can handle New York.
Lightfoot then said that the speech, quote, makes me more resolved to do everything I can to change the results in November.
Well, I'm with you 100%. Maybe we could figure out a new system where the loser is not declared the winner, which is apparently the governing principle in the state of Iowa and the governing principle, as I like to point out, in the United States. As I like to point out, in 2016, the winner of the popular vote was Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump got to be the president. That's because we have this crazy electoral college system. And as David Ferris has pointed out in this show many times, if the shoe was on the other foot, if the Republican Party had been the victim of this scam with the electoral college going back twice in this century, there would already be a movement to address it and get rid of the Electoral College, because the Republican Party plays to win. The Democrat Party, I don't know what they do. They play to divvy out contracts to people. I don't know what they're in the game for. So right now, my opinion, all the experts are saying that whoever the Democratic nominee is will likely do even better in the popular vote than Hillary Clinton. And yet they're projecting that Donald Trump could win again because of the Electoral College. So Lori Lightfoot, I think I would instead of just going to Washington and hanging out, passing out cards, why don't you lead the charge to change the Electoral College? That's asking a lot for Chicago mayor, especially since our enlightened state to the west of us, Iowa, has its own mini Electoral College.
Shout out to Brienne on the live stream chat. She's channeling her inner Frank this afternoon. She's got the facts here. San Francisco Mayor London Breed.
Told you, London. Thank you very much. That, well, you know what I mean? It's like the first name's like, whatever. Anyway, London, I'm writing it down so I don't forget it.
And let's end it out here with more Mayor Lightfoot news. And no, this news does not involve Donald Trump or Macy's.com. This one is right in the Ben Joravsky wheelhouse, if you ask me. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times and the one and only Fran the Woman Spielman. Lori Lightfoot orders sweeping TIF reforms.
Saw this, yeah.
Arguing that TIF spending decisions have, quote, occurred in the shadows for too long, Lightfoot is promising to bring in the light, as her campaign slogan famously put it.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
A new TIF investment committee will make equity the central focus of TIF subsidy decisions, with pivotal input from Chief Equity Officer Candace Moore.
All right, here's what listen, guys. I have dedicated approximately the last 20 years of my life to studying Chicago's TIF program. I'm not particularly proud of this. At times, I think, what have I done? I could have spent this time and this energy doing something really important, like learning another language. I could be fluent in Italian, French, Spanish. If I had dedicated just a tenth of the time that I've spent studying the TIF program, the corrupt, unfair, wasteful TIF program in the city of Chicago, if I just spent just a portion of that, how about if I had used that time to make financial investments? I'd be richer than Trump. I'd be richer than Pritzker. I'd be the master. I'd be richer than Warren Buffett or Bloomberg. But no, spent my time studying the TIF program. And
well, I like you the way you are.
Monroe Anderson has entered the building. Spent my time studying the TIF program. Spent my time trying to educate Chicagoans on this scam, only to have Chicagoans give me that little dull look of Iowans today. Iowans today are having that same dull look that Chicagoans have. I explained to Chicagoans how they're getting ripped off by the TIF program, and they give me that dull look. It's so complicated. Can you just talk about something else? Iowans today are trying to grasp the fact. Bernie got 32. Buttigieg got 31, but Buttigieg is so-called winner. Iowans are like, huh? I'll tell you what, the TIF program in Chicago is easier to understand and explain than the system they have in Iowa for portioning delegates. And that's saying a lot. So, going back to the TIF program, I welcome reforms. But I always say this to everybody in Chicago. Never, ever, ever trust a politician in Chicago or the state of Illinois in general who tells you they're reforming something.
That's correct.
All right, Bob. Monroe Anderson knows I'm telling the truth. He's been around a long time.
All right, I have some quotes here. Here's Samir Maykar, Deputy Mayor for Economic and Neighborhood Development, who chairs the committee, with a quote here. Quote, just like other investment committees at a bank, we're looking at projects holistically in a region, how they spur economic development.
Oh my God.
You have a body of folks like the CFO, the budget officer, the controller asking pretty tough questions to make sure that taxpayer money is being allocated in the best way possible. Lightfoot is promising a more rigorous but-for test for developers seeking city subsidies. That includes initial standards to be included immediately in a revised TIF program guide and the hiring of AECOM to put, quote, much more quantitative rigor behind, but for standards by the end of the year. Makar said, quote, we have a near-term solution and a long-term solution. Ben, you're feeling this. I can tell.
Now, let me just say this. Thank you for addressing it. But let me just remind everybody that Rahm Emanuel did the same thing, D. Back in 2011 when he marched in office, first it took Mike Quigley to explain to him, Congressman Mike Quigley explained to Rahm what the TIF program was. Rahm didn't even, Chicago went in their infinite wisdom, elected a man who didn't understand Chicago, barely ever lived here as their mayor. I think this is a good idea. We're going to elect as our mayor someone who's never lived here, knows nothing about our city. So Chicagoans showing, great wisdom in their electoral decision. They elected Rahm. Quigley explained to Rahm the TIF scam. Rahm said, oh my God, are you kidding me? The TIF program raises taxes on everybody in the city of Chicago and funnels it into bank accounts that I can control, that I alone pretty much dictate. What's wrong with that? But in order to bamboozle the city of Chicago and thinking he was changing it, he put together this blue ribbon committee. I'm not making any of this stuff up there. You can look it up. And they studied the TIF program. And then they came to these conclusions. Oh, this program is riddled with fraud, and we should change it, doing all the things that Lori Lightfoot says she's going to do now. Rahm held a press conference. Rahm said, I've changed the program, even though he was just accepting a report produced by his Blue Ribbon Committee. The Tribune and the Sun-Times wrote editorials saying, what a great mayor we have. And then he went right back to misusing and abusing the program. So, excuse me if I'm a little skeptical about any mayor that says he or she is going to reform this scam, because the whole thing about the TIFs is that it's free money for the mayor to play with the way he or she wants. So I'm a little skeptical that we will actually change it. But, D, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she will change it. So you know what? We shall see. How about that, D? Huh?
I like that. We shall see.
We shall see.
It's about as much optimism as you'll get out of that guy. We shall see. All right, so that's what's going on in the news there. Shout out to Fran Spielman for the article there. By the way, if you haven't yet, you should download the latest Fran Spielman podcast every week. Fran goes one-on-one with the movers and shakers in the city of Chicago. Former Mayor Rahm Emanuel was a guest.
Take a chill pill, man.
Retired State Senator John Cullerton was a guest. And in her latest episode, she takes the deep dive with a guy who looks like both Tom Selleck and Burt Reynolds at one time. You often hear someone looking like one or the other, but never both. It's interim police superintendent Charlie Beck, this guy right here on the Sun-Times.
Yeah.
He looks like both of them.
Yeah, okay.
It's a fantastic podcast. It's the Fran Spielman podcast, downloadable at the Chicago Sun-Times website or wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Don't go anywhere, people, because coming up after this break, we're talking all things the State of the Union address, all things what the hell happened in Iowa and more with legendary Chicago journalist Monroe Anderson. It's the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Thank you, Chicago, for this humbling victory. All I can say, you sure know how to make a guy feel at home. Yeah!
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them: Chicagoland Cremation Options.com. One more time, Chicagoland Cremation Options.com.
Fresh off the stage. Mayor, thanks for being here.
Sure thing.
And right after you saw these partial initial results coming out of Iowa, your reaction, you said better late than never from the stage. What do you say?
Well, it amounts to a remarkable victory for our campaign's vision and message, and I'm just so humbled by the support that we got from, as far as I can tell, and I haven't seen the very latest map, but as far as I can tell, every different part of the state, different kinds of communities, a lot of those counties that famously switched from President Obama to Trump, and now we need to bring back into the fold. It's just an extraordinary validation for our belief that we can unify people, and unify people both to lead and to win in an election that we can't afford to lose.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
All right, Monroe Anderson in the studio. And just one more time, that was Mayor Pete, South Bend, Indiana, who is claiming victory in Iowa, even though at the last tally, and they take forever in Iowa. They're slow moving in Iowa, Monroe.
I've been there before.
Yeah, they move slow in Iowa. It's like getting behind a tractor on a highway. It's just moving slow in Iowa. The last count, Mayor Pete was losing in the popular vote. See, Iowa has a system similar to the one we have in this country when it comes to a presidential election. So Donald John Trump lost the presidential election to Hillary Clinton, but in our system of governance, losing is winning, so he gets to be the president. In the state of Iowa, Pete Buttigieg gets to claim to be the victor, even though he's losing the popular vote. So Iowa Democrats, man, I guess you're trying to win by replicating how Trump won.
And we are not trying to win over Iowa listeners.
Well said by a Bernie bro.
Oh, man. Is that your Mayor Pete button? Man. Look, I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. I'll say it again and again and again. I can't wait till Atiba's here because I can't wait to say it to him. And Delmarie Cobb, she's going to hear the same thing, too. To all my centrist brothers and sisters in the Democratic Party, all those of the moderate persuasion, I'm telling you right now, stop wasting your time with Joey Biden. Stop wasting your time with Amy Klobuchar. Stop wasting your time with Pete Buttigieg and go right to Bloomberg. The man's got $59 billion to spend. Not $59 billion, but at least $5 billion to spend on the election. If you're going to go with a centrist, go with a billionaire centrist.
I suspect that you're right.
Yeah, you know I'm right. What? There's not a dime's worth of difference between Pete Buttigieg and Bloomberg, except Bloomberg has more experience. That's a big difference right there.
One is straight and one is gay.
All right, that means nothing. And
it depends on who you are and how you think.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. So in terms of ideological worldview, there's not a dime's worth of difference between Pete Buttigieg and Michael Bloomberg. So why would you go with the guy who doesn't have the resources to beat Trump as opposed to the billionaire? If you believe in their ideology.
Well, Tuesday Super Tuesday will make that determination. If Mike, with all his millions of dollars, comes in and does a great job, comes in second place even, then you're right on your prediction. If he doesn't, that you should go with Bloomberg versus Pete. But if Bloomberg comes in fourth or fifth, then you may as well stay with Pete if you're with Pete.
If you're with Pete,
yeah.
I don't know what. Listen, I have a lot of doubts about Pete Buttigieg.
This is the problem: is a large percentage of Americans are tired of baby boomers.
I don't see that.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. If I tally up the votes, the baby boomers annihilated the millennial. The millennial in the race is Pete Buttigieg. The baby boomers in the race were Biden.
No.
Oh, is he? He's older than a baby boomer.
Yes. Yes.
He's
all
older
of
than
them.
a baby.
Baby boomers go from 1946 to 1964.
So the 3 out of the 4 were older than baby boomers.
Right,
Okay,
exactly.
So I mean, millennials are like
They're what Woody Allen describes as in the trenches, in between the baby boomers and the greatest generation. It's hard to describe them.
You're quoting Woody Allen?
Yes.
Not a good idea these days, Monroe. Wait, so
I mean, everybody has, as my mother used to tell me, a fool can tell you something.
all right. So, are you ready to say you're ditching Biden and Warren for Mayor Pete?
No. I told you I'm open.
Okay.
I haven't made a decision
All
yet.
right.
But,
Fair enough.
But I'm not. Well, I'm becoming less and less of a Bernie supporter.
Less and less.
Less and
How
less.
can less be? How can anything be less than 0?
No. The scale of 1 to 10, he was a 2.
I don't know. I don't care who you support in whatever election. I do not know what mathematical universe exists where 31 is greater than 32. And
The new math.
the new math of the Democratic Party. They're trying. Maybe if we make less more than more in Iowa, we can do.
Well, no. The reality is it's a very cockeyed system.
I agree
They
with
need to
that.
throw it out and just have a regular primary, and they don't need to be first.
Okay, fair enough. Yes, they definitely.
Right.
I'm going to ask Delmarie Cobb about that when she comes in at 2:30. She's been following Chicago politics forever, political strategist. What she thinks about Illinois going first. I like the idea of Illinois going first as opposed to Iowa. What's your thoughts on it?
Oh, good idea. Good idea. Because right now we are insignificant in these races.
Monroe, just think about that. Can you imagine if Illinois were first? All the love we would get from the presidential candidates. It would all have been tromping around Illinois. We would be doing midweek with Monroe, and into the studio would walk Pete Buttigieg to say, Monroe, I love Gary, Indiana.
Right.
Monroe is from Gary, Indiana. And Monroe would say, I'm still not voting for you. All right, Monroe, let's do the over-under on percentage of black vote that Mayor Pete's going to get after this resounding victory, in quotes, in Iowa. Right now, last I saw, he was at 0% in the polls.
No, I think he worked his way up to 2.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, right. I think I saw he said 2.
I see.
In South Carolina, he's up to 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is okay. Things are looking up for him, and he's up to 2%. All right, let's talk all things Trump. Before he comes on the show, Monroe generally puts something on his Facebook page. I'm going to call it up here if I can. It's pretty funny stuff that he writes. Hold on one second. Here we go. Where's Monroe? Monroe. Here we go. I was up and then it went away. Here we go. Monroe Anderson. There's a Monroe Anderson in Fresno, Texas. I did not know that.
Oh, my Lord.
Here we go. Stevie Wonder can see that Trump is guilty. So how fake was the Senate fair trial without witnesses or evidence presented? After the vote to acquit goes down later today, will DJ Trump become the O.J. Simpson of American politics, where we know what he did, but he got away with it anyway? Yes, indeed. Is DJ O.J.? The question I put to you, Monroe.
DJ is definitely O.J., except O.J. had more character.
Not quite sure I would buy that line.
It was a crime of passion.
Yeah. That is send your emails.
And the glove didn't fit.
Send your emails and thought and comments to Monroe Anderson, not me. All right. So Donald Trump is going to get away with it. First of all, is there any? You said you had breaking news.
Breaking news.
Go ahead. Tell the breaking news.
History has just been made. Mitt Romney,
The senator from Utah.
yes, former Republican presidential candidate, split his vote. Is going to split his vote. He's going to vote remove for abuse of power and acquit for obstruction of Congress. And he is the first senator in American history to vote against a president in his party.
Is that right?
Yes.
No, I'm momentarily having a brain freeze. No Democrats voted against Clinton.
Right.
Why?
To remove him, right. And no, let's see, Republicans, I guess it was, with Johnson.
So what is he voting for? What was the one that he's voting for?
Abuse of power. Abuse of power.
And so the abuse of power was when he he twisted the arm of the
Yes.
Ukraine president.
Yes.
That's the abuse of power, as
Yes.
opposed to obstructing Congress by not providing documents.
And Romney gave this really very good speech where God had a little bit to do with his decision. As he's a man of religion, of faith, but he just couldn't, in good conscience. And he was very emotional when he made this speech. Now, this wasn't one of those typical vapid Romney statements or anything. I mean, you could see that it was a difficult decision for him.
Well, I've got to give him credit for that. I mean, listen, Donald Trump has intimidated our Republican Party. He owns the Republican Party.
Right.
That was obvious from the spectacle of the State of the Union speech, which I put in quotes.
Right.
So they're so intimidated by a Donald Trump tweet.
And Romney acknowledges that he's going to catch holy hell with this position within the party. He knows that.
Now, how is it playing? How is it playing among Republicans? Have other Republicans been blasting him?
Literally, this happened while I was driving
I see.
here. So I don't know, except I did hear some commentary about his getting a lot of support through Twitter or something like that, some online support. But people were calling him brave and courageous, et cetera.
Well, I mean, in political terms, what he's doing is courageous. He's
Right.
taking a strong stand. Let's put it in terms of Illinois. It'd be the equivalent of a Democrat standing up to Rod Blagojevich when Rod Blagojevich was impeached. Oh, wait. Every Democrat in the state of Illinois did that. Okay. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I guess, I'm struggling.
They knew he was going to jail. The Republicans haven't figured it out about Trump yet.
I don't know, man. Donald,
No, let me tell you the scenario.
All right,
Okay.
here we go.
All right. Okay.
Here we go.
I keep telling you this stuff, Ben, and you just ignore me, or you poo-poo it or something.
I'm going to take notes this time.
Okay.
And then after that, please explain to me how a 31 is more than 32 in Iowa math. But let's deal with the first thing first. Go ahead.
Okay. Trump will get trounced in 9 months. After he's trounced, because he would have acted up during these 9 months horribly. I mean, much worse than he's done in the past 3 years. They will open the sealed indictments on him. And it'll be 20 years in 2020 for Trump.
Okay.
And I may exaggerate the years a little bit. He may only get 2 or 3.
Let's just consider your prediction in light of what went down last night.
Yes.
Last night was a spectacle staged by Donald Trump in which he used the
Reality TV.
Yes.
Yes, it was reality TV.
Take us through it.
Yeah, where, first of all, his lapdogs in unison were chanting 4 more years.
Now wait, time out.
At a State of the
Union
exactly,
speech.
Exactly. I mean, that's worse than you lie.
You Lie, of course, was the congressman. I think his name
Wilson.
was Wilson. Very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Joe Wilson.
Yeah.
From South Carolina, I want to say, who blurted out during Barack Obama's State of the Union, "You lie."
He was talking about the ACA, aka Obamacare.
Obamacare.
Yeah.
So they were chanting 4 more years. Has that ever happened?
No.
Never.
No, never, ever, 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 ever. And then he refused. He refused to shake Nancy Pelosi's hand. So she dropped the part about there's some statement about honorable or whatever president.
The protocol that you
protocol,
begin.
right? She dropped that, and then she made faces throughout the speech every time he told a lie. So she was almost like an animated cartoon.
Rolling her
exactly,
eyes.
Right, exactly, because he was lying.
By the way, did you actually watch the speech?
Oh, yes.
All right, man,
yes.
You deserve credit for that.
Right, exactly.
Right,
No. I watched all hour and a half of it. Yeah.
And then of course
she tore up the speech
tore
at
up the
end.
speech,
Yes.
which that's part I did. I missed the speech because I was at the Hideout doing the show last night, but I read about it and I watched some of the highlights, and the highlight.
Right, exactly.
Now, what was your?
So it's the war is on. We're gonna have some interesting, as in Chinese curse, 9 months ahead of us. With them battling.
Yeah, and so the
because let me tell you this too, because you probably didn't know this. They are discussing the House Democrats are discussing bringing Bolton, subpoenaing Bolton and bringing him in to testify.
how do they have the authority to do that?
Yes. They can impeach Trump again if they want
Wait,
to.
time out. Oh, the House.
The House.
The Senate. My bad. Yeah. They should.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
They're going to bring Bolton in.
Absolutely. David Ferris, our good friend from Roosevelt University, always advises the Democrats to play as tough and as hardball as the Republicans do.
Right.
So do you think, how many Benghazi investigations?
4.
Okay.
I think it was
so
4.
we're just
At
getting
least 4.
started.
Right, exactly.
We're getting, I absolutely bring Bolton in. Absolutely.
Right.
So they could just have a second impeachment.
Right, exactly. We're going to impeach him again. They rigged the first trial. Let's see if they can do it again.
I'm all for it, 100%. I mean, it's ridiculous. The notion, first of all, that he gets to be president of the United States when he doesn't win the popular vote and acts like he has a mandate when he doesn't have a mandate is ridiculous enough. And the Republicans wouldn't have put up for it for 1 second if the roles reversed. Monroe Anderson.
They would be tar and feathering by now.
Absolutely. Oh, first of all, they would starting proceedings to change. To amend the Constitution so we do away with the Electoral College. That's what they would be doing right now. They'd be if it had gone down in 2000 this way, they'd be well into 20 years of changing it. They probably have half the legislative bodies in the country of having voted on it already.
Right.
Wow, this is impeach him again. Now, what was your thoughts when they gave the shout out to Rush Limbaugh and?
More than a shout out. He gave him the Medal of Honor, whatever medal it was the greatest thing. Because Rush, and I don't wish ill on anybody, but Rush has stage 4 cancer, lung cancer. And so he probably won't be around this time next year to celebrate Trump's loss.
Well, it was like, that's what I'm saying. It was Donald Trump's show. And he was going to defy the Democrats every step he had. He was going to proclaim himself the champion. He was going to think about it. What he's done over the last 4 years. First of all, I always say this in Chicago. They do this when a new mayor comes in. The new mayor always says that the budget deficit is greater than it actually is, so that within a year he or she can take credit for having reduced the budget deficit, even though it's all made up numbers anyway. So Donald Trump did that as president. He said the country was in worse shape than it actually was.
It wasn't in bad shape.
That's what I'm saying.
It was not in worse shape. It was not in bad shape.
Yeah, this goes back to that.
Because as you know, I fight with my right-wing friends on Facebook. Before Trump, they were talking about American exceptionalism and how great America was, et cetera, et cetera. Trump comes along, and now it needs to be made great again. And so one of the things I would ask them is, well, exactly when did America go from being exceptional to needing to be made great again? I must have missed that time period.
What is their response?
They have no. He's Obama. So that was their response.
Obama.
Right, exactly.
And then, so your sense of how this is playing out, your sense of, okay, Donald, I understand that a Trump America, and we are two countries, loves Donald Trump, loved that spectacle, was probably weeping when
and his ratings have gone up. His approval ratings are now at 49, which are the highest they've ever been.
And your thoughts on that?
I don't know. This befuddles me, but I never understood how and why Reagan was president. So some of this stuff is just I can't fathom.
Yeah. 49%. Atiba Buchanan has entered the room. 49% I'll leave it with this before we take a break to bring Atiba on to join us, Monroe. Okay. 49% is the highest it's ever been. I've not seen this, but I'll take you at your word. You read it right, unlike the Democrats in Iowa who don't know that 32 is more than 31. And
boy, you Bertie Bros are hard losers.
Wait, you know what? We're going to ask Atiba Buchanan when he comes on the show how you could call Bernie the loser when he got more votes than Buttigieg.
I'm not calling him the loser. I'm just pointing out that the young guy got won.
The young guy,
according to Iowa's rules.
Okay,
they get to make up their own rules. You don't get to give them Chicago rules at Iowa.
Hold on, this just in, breaking news. The San Francisco 49ers were victorious in the Super Bowl because they scored less points than the Kansas City Chiefs. Iowa rules are now governing the Super Bowl.
Sports is not politics.
I mean,
the reason people are fascinated with sports is because there are numbers that you can measure. It's not subjective.
I see. You know what? I hope there are no chefs out there applying Iowa rules to like the recipes. I'm going to make a cake.
No,
it calls for 30 ounces, but I'm going to put 32 in.
No. The difference between cooking, the chef or the chef does, and a baker does, is baking is scientific. If it calls for a quarter cup of oil, you can't say, oh, I'll throw a dash in or I'll throw a cup in. I mean, it's science, so it's a formula. All right. Whereas cooking is an art.
I see. All right.
And so you can do it all kind of which ways.
As long as you bring up the subject of baking, I would say the Democrats in Iowa are seriously baked. We're going to take a break. I'll bring on Atiba Buchanan to join the conversation. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. What you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit admiralx.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
Extraordinary, and it's a credit to the team, to the organizers that we had, to the values that they carried as they engaged with caucus goers, and above all, I think to the vision that we are offering to turn the page and move to the future.
Look, I've been following you not only throughout your campaign, but all throughout today. And on stage just now, you became emotional in the moment talk. What does this moment mean?
It's extraordinary. This is a moment that we have been building towards from when we first opened that exploratory committee with 4 people in a tiny office in South Bend. No big email list, no personal fortune, no campaign money either. I mean, we had to build this thing from scratch, and to see how far we've come, what we've been able to do. Now again, it's the end of the beginning, right? I mean, there is a long road ahead, but again, it shows you the power of having a message and connecting with voters, with caucus goers who spend a year working you over, kicking the tires on your ideas, looking you in the eye, and just the ability to earn that support is so moving.
But look, it was almost a year ago to the day that we were sitting on your couch in your living room with Chasten in South Bend, and now you are making history in this moment.
Yeah.
Just let that set in, and what does that mean? You are with the first contest in the rearview mirror, you are the leading candidate right now.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, and it also, I hope, means something to a lot of people wondering if they fit in. People who are different, people who don't know if they belong in their community or in their family. This is a proof that you can believe in yourself and in your country.
Look, if it's not first out of Iowa, does second place change your reaction?
No, I mean, look at where we are. I mean, to have come...
All right, guys, we're on the air. Whoa. Let's go. Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, February 5th. It's just moments away. But before we get into that, Ben loves that interview with Mayor Pete, by the way.
Who was interviewing him?
CNN.
Someone, CNN showing its colors. We love anybody but Bernie.
They got their orders. The International Association of Machinists in Aerospace, Non-Aerosmith Workers, Local 126 and District 8 sponsor this program. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9 are sponsors, as well as the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Can't thank these unions enough for jumping on board and sponsoring the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's show for Wednesday, February 5th, is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Let's hear some more Mayor Pete.
Where we've come from to be a part of such a remarkable field of Democrats who I have different ideas from, but also admire and respect deeply, and to have come now to the front of this process.
Hour number 2, let's go. It is Wednesday, February 5th. And live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is The Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we still got Monroe Anderson in studio. We're going to be talking all things what the hell happened in Iowa and the State of the Union address with WVO wins, the Buchanan and Seton shows, Atiba Buchanan, and it's the long-awaited return of the Chicago political mastermind, Delmarie Cobb. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
We do indeed have a lot of Chicago masterminds in the studio. I've been struggling with this issue all day. Maybe Atiba Buchanan can enlighten me. I'm a little confused by Monroe's attempts to enlighten me. Maybe Delmarie can help me. The latest results out of Iowa: Bernie Sanders, 34,136. Pete Buttigieg, 33,094. Somehow in the mathematical universe that exists and governs Democratic politics in Iowa, 34 is less than 33. I just, wow, man. New math in Iowa,
Right?
Atiba.
Absolutely. First of all, I'm really disappointed in Iowa. This is the ultimate case of you had one job, right? They've had 4 years to get ready for this one thing, and they completely botch it and mess it up. And I'm hoping that this is enough, because this has been in discussions before, to stop having the first caucus or primary in Iowa. And I'm hoping this is the straw that broke the camel's back.
All right, now I'm going to follow up with that. But before I do, D, you got an update for us?
Absolutely, I do. And Ben Joravsky, we need to have a talk.
What'd I do wrong now?
Well, it's been happening for a while, and I figured we'd come down to this road, so here we are. Stephen on the live stream chat weighed in and let us know, y'all need, all caps, need, very important here. Yeah. Y'all need to stop saying Bernie bro. Been speechless.
Why?
He explains. He goes on to explain. I've wondered about this. He goes on to explain. Stephen says Bernie's supporters are less white and less male than the other candidates. He then says calling Bernie supporters bros erases the women and people of color who support Bernie, of which there are many.
Wait, time out.
Bernie bros is an anti-progressive attack which is not founded in an empirical understanding of the Bernie campaign.
But I like this guy. I like this guy.
Okay, but Atiba, just deal with one thing. Bro does not say that you're white.
No, but see, I consider myself a Bernie brother. There's a difference.
Monroe, are you a Bernie brother these days?
Not brother.
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 I got you.
BROTHA.
I hear
Yeah,
you.
right, exactly. No, I understand the difference.
Right.
All right, fair enough.
Subtly.
Yeah,
All right.
I
So should
understand
we
the
not call
difference.
you a Bernie brother? Is that unfair?
Call me whatever you like. Bernie's my man. I don't care.
All right.
But I understand where he's coming from because Bernie does have a great amount of support. When you talk about young people, it's not just young men that support him. His support definitely is across both genders all day long.
Yeah.
So I get what he's saying, and you don't want to erase the women that support him. So that's a great point.
All right, Steve. You make a great point. Although I
like him.
I will say this, Atiba. And by the way, Steve, you should definitely check out the Atiba Buchanan show. Well, I should not just the Atiba Buchanan. My good friend David Seaton is also
Buchanan
on
and Seaton show.
Buchanan's. David Seaton was here Friday battling a Bernie supporter. Almost said a Bernie bro.
There we go, buddy. I'm proud of you.
But I just gotta say this on election night, Monday night. I was fielding calls from many outraged Bernie Sanders supporters who could not believe what they thought was anti-Bernie bias in the coverage from MSNBC, and what they could not believe was the arrogance of their view of Pete Buttigieg to claim victory, even though there was no victory to claim.
Right.
And one woman I talked to said, "I'm a Bernie bro." She was so fired up. So anyway, I'm just saying.
Love it.
It's
Well,
out there.
see, and I love alliteration. So that's why I like Bernie bro. Same reason this is Dr. D.
Or also known as Dr. Doobie, as in doobies. He's smoked over the years.
Oh, that's something new since you've last been here at Atiba. I'm a Dr. Doobie now. Awesome.
Since they legalized January 1st,
Yeah.
is that when it started?
Actually, he was Dr. Doobie before they legalized it. So anyway, Steve, all right. I'm going to really do my best.
Steve and company, Moore joined in and said, yeah, let's knock off the Bernie bro thing.
Okay, here we go. Discipline. Focus, Ben. Focus. Don't use Bernie bro. Okay. All right, got it.
There we go.
Atiba Buchanan, before I follow up with the question, tell everybody where they can listen to your great radio show with David Seaton.
Absolutely. So we air on WVON AM 1690 and WVON.com and iHeartRadio Friday nights from 9 until midnight Central.
That's correct.
Buchanan and Seaton show.
And Monroe Anderson will be your guest one of these days.
He can come Friday if he wants.
There we go. Deal has been cut. All right. Go back to the issue that you raised, Iowa coming first. I think I've always thought it was ridiculous that Iowa would come first anyway. But when you ran down the list, go do it again. It's been a while. Of all the flaws that in the mindset of having Iowa go first.
Well, first of all, it's one of the least diverse states, right? And I have a bigger problem with Iowa than that, per se. But let's start with that. So you're talking about an electorate that is over 90% white. But a bigger problem, and that doesn't represent the country, and it doesn't represent the Democratic Party. So with that said, it's missing a lot of people of color, so forth and so on. But my bigger problem is the way that they have the caucus set up. There's so little participation. 170,000 people across the entire state that I think has 2 million registered voters. They're doing something we should be trying to promote as many people to hear their voice, to cast their vote as possible, not limit it. And the caucus is overly and unnecessarily complicated for people to be able to participate. Mm-hmm. What happened to go into a booth, have a list of names, check the one you like, count them all up, add it up, and see who won? And I don't know how we get so far away from that, especially as a country that has had a democracy now for almost 250 years. Like, how do we get voting wrong? I'm just stunned.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on Governor Pritzker's suggestion that we make Illinois the number one state, the first state out of the?
I think that'd be phenomenal, and I didn't even know you said that. He said that until you just told me just now. I didn't even know he said that. But again, Illinois as a state is well more diverse, well more representative. There's a huge Latino population here. There's a huge population of everything: Chinese, Czech, Polish people, you name it. They're all, especially I'm just thinking of Chicago kind of, but again, Illinois I think would make a much better state than Iowa to represent to give people a true pulse of where the Democratic Party is heading come election time.
All right, now let's do a little Bernie talk. I've got a Bernie supporter, a Bernie
Indeed.
brother in the room.
Unapologetically.
Unapologetic, and a not Bernie supporter sitting right next to him, a not Bernie brother in the room. And we had a debate last night at the Hideout. We had Brandon Johnson was representing Elizabeth Warren, did a great job of representing Elizabeth Warren, and Alderman Carlos Ramirez-Rosa did an equally great job of representing Bernie Sanders. It seems to me that there's, what I'm about to say is I don't think that dramatic, a concerted effort by the powers that be, the not Bernie brother supporters in the Democratic Party, to undercut Bernie every chance they can. They don't want Bernie to be the nominee. They want anybody else to be the nominee. And that is just inflaming the divide that already existed between the Bernie supporters and the rest of the Democratic Party. Do you view the world the way I do? Do you agree with what I just said, or do you disagree with what I just said?
I agree with it wholeheartedly because there's still unresolved feelings from 2016. And there's still lies being perpetrated from 2016. To have Hillary Clinton come back after being in hiatus for so long and now getting this close to the election to begin to spout these views about the support she supposedly didn't get from Bernie Sanders. He caucused with her 43 times. So what did she want him to do? And so when she comes out and says things like, well, nobody likes working with Bernie, and she suggests again that he could have done more to coalesce the party, I remember being extremely upset on the night of the convention, where she was, she was basically once they had gotten done with California, they basically anointed her the candidate. And it was like the very next day at the convention, one of the celebrities, Sarah Silverman, was admonishing the Bernie supporters to basically get over it, and it's time to get behind Hillary. I'm like, it's been one day since we figured out that something was amiss, and here you are admonishing us, and that culture has never left. So I'm just, like I said, to see Hillary Clinton come out and say the things that she said after she's lost, and to know that Bernie Sanders, I saw the man swallow what happened, go out there and support her the way that he did. As a Bernie supporter, it's very frustrating because, again, that's continuing in 2020.
Monroe, you have to want to weigh in on this one, no?
What's really interesting to me is that if it comes down to a battle between Bernie and Bloomberg, the standard bearer of the Democratic Party is not going to be a Democrat.
Well, you could argue
and that says something about what the party is doing or not doing. It's amazing to me.
Well, let me say this: it depends on what you call a Democrat, because by definition and by name, Joe Manchin is a Democrat, but Bernie Sanders is 10 times the Democrat Joe Manchin is.
Joe Manchin, of course, being the senator from West Virginia. Good rebuttal, Monroe. Your response?
And I'm saying that based on Bernie's voting record.
Mm-hmm. And Joe Manchin, by the way, has Joe Manchin decided or indicated if he's going to vote for impeachment or acquittal?
He hadn't, to my knowledge, driving in.
Okay.
But they're doing their speeches and what have you, and he was still on the fence last time I heard him.
And for that matter, Elizabeth Warren was a Republican.
But Joe Manchin would not win the nomination for president of the Democrats either. So that's not a very good argument one way or the other. Now, the reality, the only point I'm making is that Bernie just became a Democrat. Although he's voted with the Democrats, of course.
And caucus with
them.
I mean, he's not a Democrat. I'll give you that.
Exactly.
I'll give you that.
And Bloomberg was a Republican, then he was an independent, and now he's going to be a Democrat.
I think he was a Democrat before he was a Republican, Bloomberg. He's been around for a while. I think he became a Republican.
What was he when he was mayor of New York?
He was a Republican. But before this gets into the issue of what party ballot do you take in when there's a primary?
And declare yourself.
Yeah. So neither Bernie Sanders, Mike Bloomberg, Elizabeth Warren, for that matter, have been lifelong. I am a lifelong Democrat.
Yeah.
I have voted Republican, I think, once in my life, and I've been voting in a lot of elections.
Yeah, me
Atiba.
too. Bernie Carey.
I voted for Bernie Carey too. 1980 state's attorney Richard F. Daley.
Exactly.
I voted for Bernie Carey,
Right.
and I also voted for Charles Percy for senator against Alex Seith. Good God, it's confession time. So that's it.
Yeah.
I'm a Democrat.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
more
I did
Democrat.
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm more Democrat than Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, Michael Bloomberg, and for that matter, Donald Trump was a Democrat. So
yeah.
Ronald W. Reagan, the patron saint of the Republican Party, was a Democrat. People change over time.
Yeah.
And so I'm not shocked that the Democrats could be embracing two people who have not been lifelong Democrats. The reality is, Monroe, Donald Trump has made, that's the whole point. Donald Trump has made a lot of people Democrats.
Right.
That's your argument.
Right.
So
He made Joe
that
Walsh a Democrat.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. I was just making an observation. It's nothing that I'm concerned about that way, one way or the other.
Well, were you going to say something? Did I cut you off? I'm concerned that this fight is continuing in the Democratic Party. It seems very difficult for establishment Democrats, just to come out and say that they will support Bernie Sanders. I don't understand this.
I'll give you an example of what frustrates, quote unquote, Bernie bros. On Twitter, I was having a debate with a guy, and this was a month ago. Mm-hmm. He had posed a question on Twitter, well, are Bernie supporters going to support whoever the eventual nominee is when he loses? And I said, why are we even having this conversation now? The whole conversation in question just seems premature to me, because can we cast a vote? This was a month ago. And, again, why are you already surmising him not being the nominee when we haven't even cast a vote yet? Mm-hmm. So when you juxtapose that against Bernie Sanders running away with money being raised, running away with the number of donors, running away in the polls, and then everybody keeps asking, are his supporters going to support whoever the nominee is? No, we're like, hey, we just got through Iowa. We haven't had New Hampshire yet. Can we begin to see how this plays out before we begin to talk about? I'm not trying to put anybody out of the race yet. Mm-hmm. Even the people that you could reasonably have more of a case against. So again, those are the things that frustrate me. Is that again, months ago people were already trying to ask the question: are Bernie bros going to support whoever the nominee is? And I'm like, can we just see who the nominee is going to be first?
My opposition to Bernie is not actually. The last election, I love that he pushed Hillary away from the center and more to the left. Mm-hmm. My opposition is I don't believe he can win. I was worried about that.
Electability.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Exactly. Because what's going to happen, I predicted when he lost to Hillary, was had he won, the Republicans would have plastered every TV ad with a hammer and sickle, calling him a communist. Where now that he's a front runner, basically, right now he's the front runner. Now that he's the front runner, Trump has already called him a communist. Mm-hmm. They're beginning this business already, and that's going to kill him.
I agree with you that Trump is. He's obviously taking note of Bernie. He's been tweeting about him recently. Even in the State of the Union address, he was passively talking about
the
Bernie
communists,
right?
The communists, yeah,
exactly.
Right,
so
right.
you are absolutely right with that. And I was really stunned, by the way, when he said we're going to always have American health care. And I was like, what? We have American health care? what is American health care?
Half of what he said,
that people were clapping.
Speech was nuts.
Right. And that people were clapping for that.
Okay, so here we get to it, Atiba, and this picks up with what Monroe was saying. If Bernie Sanders is the nominee, Bernie Sanders represents, we all know, health care for all. All right, that's been his issue since the moment he launched his campaign, his first presidential campaign. He's basically been running since 2015.
Right,
All right.
Continuously.
Continuously. All right, so that's been his number one issue. Donald Trump decided last night. He unveiled the Republicans' opposition to Bernie Sanders. Really, he's going to use this argument no matter who is the Democratic nominee. So let's not kid ourselves. Okay. All right. So wait. See, he said, I will do everything I can to prevent America from having socialist medicine. And the Republicans cheered. And I'm thinking, does America realize that Donald Trump right now has his lawyers in court trying to destroy what we have with Obamacare? So
pre-existing conditions.
Pre-existing conditions. So do you think that if it comes down between a decision between quote unquote socialist medicine or even communistic medicine, Americans would choose no health care over communist health care? What do you think?
40% will.
Yeah. 40.
40. Wait, except for in Monroe's universe and the state of Iowa, 60% is more than 40%. Okay, I can do. Wait, homie, do the math. Yeah, 60% is still more than 40%. So in other words, you think it's a losing.
I think healthcare is a losing argument, and that's not my opinion. We saw that evidence.
It's a losing argument for the Republicans.
For the Republicans, we saw that evidenced in the 2018 midterms. We already know that it is.
No, this is what I think. There are many ironies that we face, but this is one of the greatest ones, as far as I'm concerned, is that the Republicans are beginning to scream the communism. They don't like socialism, but their main man is in bed with a former KGB operative.
Yeah, that's true.
And don't forget Charlottesville.
Yeah,
he likes the Nazis. They're very fine people.
Right.
Yeah.
But he doesn't like communists. Which one is it?
Right.
Make up your mind.
Yeah.
Are they very fine people or not? So.
Well.
And again, that hypocrisy is completely lost upon his cult followers.
Right. Well, his defenders would say he's transactional.
Yeah, he's very transactional.
Indeed.
So when you watch the spectacle of last night's speech, Monroe and I talked a little bit about this already, but when you watch that spectacle of last night's speech, what did you think the impact was on the electorate?
Wow. He further divided the country. And that was, at this point, that's the whole purpose of the speech. I think the biggest problem I had with the majority of what he said or implied was him taking so much credit for the economy. Two parts with the economy that really bothered me. One, for him to just completely disown what Barack Obama had done for 8 years prior to him stepping into it, and then him mischaracterizing the state of the economy when he took it over. Those things bother me immensely. And the other thing that bothers me with the economy, even more than that, is the way that he characterizes how well it is. Because, young people are working, but still young people can't afford to move out of their parents' house, even with a college degree. People are still working 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. People don't have benefits. Half the country doesn't have retirement, anything in retirement. So when he says those things and his base eats that up, that really concerns me, because his long game and the Republican long game is so much more damaging. He said with a straight face last night, we are going to take care of your Medicare and your Medicaid. And that is a bald-faced lie.
Right. And there were many of those.
Right.
And the other factor in this, as he brags about his great economy, the reason he has this great economy is because he's running up a debt.
Exactly.
Yeah, the debt
and deficits
right.
that are
just
just
right.
otherworldly. And I remember while Barack, and the next time we hear about debt and deficit is when there's going to be a Democrat in the White House.
Oh, yeah.
Then all of that conversation is going to come back. We can't be leaving this debt for our grandchildren and their children. But because that's all I heard during the Obama administration. Mm-hmm. But I haven't heard anything about debt and deficits in 3 years.
Well, Atiba, when in the Republican view of the world, a debt and deficit exist only when that money is being allocated for social programs that help the many.
Yep.
If you have a debt and deficit because Donald Trump and the Republicans passed a massive tax cut for the wealthiest people, at the same time they're spending $700+ billion a year on military.
Yeah.
That's not a debt or deficit. Do you follow what I'm saying? It's only a debt or deficit if they can somehow or other blame
food stamps.
Food stamps.
Did you hear the applause when he talked about? And that was the other mischaracterization. For him to talk about the number of people that are off food stamps, his implication was that so many people have been uplifted through the economy that they don't need food stamps anymore, when really the reason there's less people on food stamps is because he kicked them off.
Yeah, and they're hungry.
Right. Exactly. Let's not forget that. Right. Like, that's the most important thing. So again, I'm stunned at the way he was, at what he presented, and that people were willing to absorb that, especially all those politicians. I mean, just shame on them. It's a shame. And kudos to the Democrats for holding their ground, and kudos to Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, get your thoughts on Nancy ripping up the speech.
Nancy was unlike her, I thought. Usually she does things that are way more subtle, and you got to, like, she did the little hand clap the year before, I think it was, and it's like, okay, what does she really mean by that? But that was kind of overt for her, and I was surprised.
Yeah, I mean, but during the speech in general, because he was telling so many lies, that she was shaking her head at some point. Now, it was a subtle shake. It was like,
yeah, because she's right behind him, so she couldn't be, you know,
right.
But
she couldn't be
right. But oh my God, like that was. But I will say this: I'm ready for action. I'm ready for the Democrats to get it right. I'm tired of these grand or just these things that we do for show, like the hand clap, like the ripping. That's fine, but that doesn't change kids being locked in cages. That's fine, but that doesn't change the number of people, hundreds of thousands of people getting kicked off of food stamps. We need to win. Right,
and this is why I'm intrigued by Bloomberg. I'm not sure I like him or not yet, but the thing is, he is a New Yorker, and he's going to take the gloves off and put the brass knuckles on and go up against Trump.
Well, so is Bernie, but whatever.
Let me say this with you. You're going to surprise you.
Yeah,
I agree with you on Bloomberg.
Yeah,
because and this is my thing. I'm gonna say this and I'm done. The reason I could get behind Bloomberg. It's not because it has nothing, and the reason I'm behind Bernie has nothing to do with the people. It's about their policies.
Right.
Bloomberg, I know, day one he gets in office, he is going to do everything he can to fight the NRA. We know this.
Right.
He is going to do that.
Right.
With Biden, my main issue with him, it's not that I dislike him personally. It's and I can even forgive some of the things that on a policy level he's voted for and approved that I don't like. My bigger problem with him is I cannot name the policy initiative I know he's going to champion on day one. Can't name it. And I haven't seen anybody else who can.
Well, my problem with Biden, and I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, but the way he's handled Trump attacking his son.
Great point.
He should have been fighting back every which way on that. And he should have dragged the Trump children in it. What they're doing is much worse than what Hunter did. And, and he's being this gentleman about it and everything. And, there's sometimes you just have to get it on.
And to do that, that wouldn't have been muddying anything. He would have only been telling the truth.
Right. Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
That's the difference. Like they're lying about Hunter. I mean, or they're lying about Hunter Biden, and there's truth about what Ivanka and Jared in particular are doing. Ivanka is just off the charts between the trademarks in China and everything else that she's doing. And just their lack
Saudi Arabia.
And Saudi Arabia. Thank you. So, like, they have the truth on their side. I agree with you. I hadn't thought about that much, but, I agree with you wholeheartedly. He should have been fighting much, much harder.
All right, going back to Joe Biden, I'm doing raw votes from Iowa, okay?
Yeah.
Just real numbers as opposed to Iowa Democratic numbers. Bernie in first place with 34. Buttigieg in second place with 33. Warren in third place with 26. Joe Biden in fourth place with 17,623 votes. Joe Biden's campaign is through. Joe Biden got fourth place, Monroe, in Iowa. If I'll say this a million times, if you're a centrist, there are stronger candidates than Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I don't know why the centrist, the only thing that could possibly prop up Joe Biden are black voters in South Carolina who still appreciate Joe Biden for being Barack Obama's wingman.
Right.
Thank you for saying that.
Right.
I have racked my brain, and I was like, why is this black support so strong? And it just has to be because black people saw him as somebody that was loyal to Barack Obama at a time that Barack Obama was just had all this incoming vile and spew coming at him. And I'll give Joe Biden credit; he stood by him, and that has to be it, because I can't think of anything policy related that would support such loyalty. I don't understand it.
That is it. I mean, I've had so many conversations with people. That is it. Well, Biden was Obama's guy. I've had that conversation a million times, Atiba. And there was a very interesting essay. I urge everybody to check it out if you're into Biden and Obama lore. Henry Louis Gates, who is the professor of literature at Harvard, who had the run-in, I don't know if you remember this, with the police officer in Cambridge.
Yeah, he's a history.
Yeah. I believe it's history literature, but whatever. Yeah. I go with literature. We'll make a bet for lunch, and then we'll go to have lunch anyway. All right. Anyway, whatever he is, he's a Harvard professor, a very distinguished professor, and he was a gentleman who had the run-in with the Cambridge police officer and led to a war of words and Obama. The beer summit. Yeah. And so Henry Louis Gates did an interview, very interesting interview in the New York Times, where he talked about the beer summit and the role Biden played in it. And what he said was effectively Biden was the white guy they needed in that summit to balance it, because you couldn't have a summit with two black guys and a white guy. Right. Because the cop from Cambridge was white. Right. Okay, the black guy is the president of the United States. Whatever. So, they had to bring a white guy in. They brought in.
Well, that's the problem with America right now, is that you could be a president and still not have the power. And if you're black, of a white president. You can be a black president. You are nearly as powerful or anything else.
But that's the role Biden has played, and some people appreciate it, but I think it's over. Atiba, when you get that kind of turnout in Iowa, that I just
you know what makes that particularly egregious? He wasn't at the impeachment inquiry. He wasn't in Washington trying to vote. He had all that time to campaign, do whatever he wanted to do in Iowa, and to come up fourth against, behind Sanders and Warren in particular, who spent the past couple of weeks in Washington. That's atrocious for him. So, and nobody expected him to do all that. I think I take that back though. He was leading in Iowa for a little while, right? A few months ago.
Yeah. Well, he was showing. I don't know if he was leading.
Well, everything
because he didn't put a lot of effort into it initially.
Everything.
And then they decided he should.
He's been back. Everything is suspect when it comes to Iowa numbers, because apparently in Iowa, 33 is more than 34. So.
And here's his bigger problem, because we're talking about these votes. His bigger problem is money.
Yeah. Well, that gets back to Bloomberg. Now, we're talking about Bloomberg. My position is that he should be the candidate of the centrists. That's your guy. He's got the money to really go after Trump, which leads me to his opening commercial his commercial in the Super Bowl, which I don't know if you saw it. You alluded to it. It accentuated his opposition to the gun culture in this country, his willingness to defy the NRA. I thought it was an interesting commercial to lead with.
At the Super Bowl.
At the Super Bowl.
With a bunch of beer drinking, gun hugging guys.
Which opens up with jets, bomber jets flying over the stadium.
Right.
But I looked at it, I thought about it, I looked at it this way. TB, get your thoughts on this, Monroe, as well. It was his way of going after, like, the proverbial Democratic suburbanite voter who is believes in gun control, believes in a woman's right to choose, believes in some kind of environmental regulations, maybe not going too far. In other words, your typical suburban centrist, but has some hardcore views, and that was his way of winning them over and identifying himself as someone they could trust. That was his pitch for that. Because you're right. It makes no sense if you're trying to win over Trump voters, particularly in the Super Bowl setting. Right. But it's his way of establishing credibility.
And the other thing is, he didn't miss the $5 million for the commercial.
He what, Dad?
He didn't miss the $5 million for the commercial.
The money is irrelevant.
Right, exactly. Right.
So what's your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great strategy. I think we spend far too much time trying to, when I say we, I mean the Democratic Party, spending time trying to woo over working class voters or whatever, white working class voters, when those people, we have to come to the conclusion they're not going to vote for you. And so the question becomes, how do you expand your base? How do you win over independents? That's the only two questions we need to be asking. How do we excite the people that were excited in 2008 and in 2012? That's the only recipe we need to be trying to replicate, because those are the winning recipes. Barack Obama won both of his elections by complete and utter landslides. And because that was because more people voted, because they were excited. And that's again, my issue with Biden is, where's all this excitement supposed to come from for this candidate?
Right. Did you see that campaign button for Biden that said
No.
"He'll do"?
Right. And that's the strategy. It is not to win over folks in the backwoods of what they're not going to vote for you. They would rather not have health care than have health care for all. They'd rather go bankrupt and die than to see what they would consider illegal person be able to access a benefit here in the United States. Let them be. But there are a bunch of reasonable independents that you can swing over your way, and you can certainly expand the base of the party so that you get the turnout you need. We're going to be, because here's the other thing that we're not talking about. We can't forget, Donald Trump is going to cheat. He's made it clear. He told George Papadopoulos, yes, I cheat with a foreign power. He just did it and got impeached for it, and he's going to do it again. We also have voter suppression. So we have a Republican Party that will do anything to stay in power. And the only way that we're going to beat them is to have a turnout so massive that it just quells whatever they're trying to do to cheat to win.
All right. Well, now that brings me to this point. Last night at the Hideout, we had the debate. I already mentioned it. And Brandon Johnson was there, Cook County Board Commissioner Brandon Johnson, who represents a district that goes from the west side of Chicago into the western suburbs. Got a lot of votes out of Oak Park. Chicago teacher union official. Anyway, he was there representing Elizabeth Warren. But in the course of the conversation, he made a very important point. And he said that when he's speaking about his community, and by that he meant the black community, he said there's a lot of indifference out there. You cannot overestimate that there's a sense that the political system has not worked for black people. There's a sense that there's no real reason to vote, that it doesn't work for you. They don't come through on their promises for you. It's just, what's the point? And that, I'm paraphrasing what he was saying, is very disparaging, a very difficult message to take if you want Trump to lose, because it's absolutely key that there be a big turnout from the black neighborhoods in the black precincts in Chicago and Milwaukee and Detroit and Philadelphia, et cetera. Atiba, what's your read of this right now?
I agree with him that there is a lot of apathy and indifference. And the only way you're going to overcome that is, well, with a combination of the right candidate and the right message. And that's why, again, I'm with Bernie Sanders. It's not him per se, but when you talk about, free college, free state college, when you talk about student loan cancellation, when you talk about free health care, and I hate to use the word free, but, universal health care, I think is a better way to put it. When you talk about those things, those are not laws that are specifically designed for black people, but black people would immensely benefit from having their student loans canceled, from being able to access health care. And if you can get a winning message like that out, that will help get people more excited. But that, to me, that's really what it comes down to, is getting the right policies and getting the right messenger out there to get that population voting again. Because again, that's how Republicans win when we don't vote. So when we, in the United States, again, the place that almost invented voting, to have such a poor showing of voter participation that we have as a nation, that's how Republicans win. That's how Barack Obama won, because we broke that trend for two administrations in a row.
Delmarie Cobb has entered the studio. Delmarie Cobb has entered to talk about Chicago legends. She's right there in the studio. She's getting fired up. I know she's got a lot to say about politics, but I'm going to leave you gentlemen with this question, which will lead right into the Delmarie Cobb segment. So pay attention, Delmarie, what I'm about to ask. In my humble opinion, if the Democrats are going to beat Donald John Trump, we know that the nominee will be a white person, and most likely it'll be a white male. They absolutely, positively have to have a black woman on the ticket as the vice presidential running mate. Do you agree with me, Atiba Buchanan?
No, not necessarily. I've imagined a couple of dream tickets. People have talked about Biden and Harris, which I think is a great ticket. If Bernie Sanders were the nominee, I'd love to see him tap either Kamala Harris or Cory Booker. I think either one of those candidates would be a great vice presidential pick for him.
Monroe?
If it's Biden, he definitely needs a black woman. But I can't imagine any of them not having a black person in this next election. I just can't. I mean, and expecting to win. So let's go through it. If it's Mayor Pete, then who is it? Kamala, or is it?
Mayor Pete's not going to be the nominee. I'm just going to put that out there right now. Okay,
right. I don't know. Right. Okay. Well, okay. But I'm not going to because like I said, it's too soon right now to really figure this one out.
What was he at in South Carolina? Did you say 2% among black voters?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Mayor Pete's not going to be the nominee.
He's using the Obama playbook. I mean, he really is. He's trying that now. Whether it works or not, I don't know. We'll know within a couple of weeks.
The part of the Obama playbook that he's missing is the part where you reach out to black voters. That's the part of the Obama play. Oh, that's not it. Hey, how to get white people to vote for you? Got that. Right. How to get people not get that in rural Iowa? Got that. How to get old white people? They love me. No black people in this playbook. You can't win if you don't get black people to vote for you. That's all.
Renee Ferguson was telling me that he has a lot of Obama people working for him, but it's the Obama people that don't know how to talk to black folks. That's a problem. Okay, well, let's skip that. Okay, let's do Bloomberg. Okay, so if it's Bloomberg,
needs a black woman.
He needs a black woman.
Absolutely
needs. Right. He needs
a
black woman.
He's got to be smart enough to know that.
Yeah.
He has to be smart enough to know that. And there's tons of great candidates out there that could fit the bill, in my humble opinion.
Oh yeah, of course.
And if he picks the right one, that solves that enthusiasm problem.
Yeah, but we have the strategist, the pro over here. So you got to get her into this conversation.
We will bring Delmarie Cobb on. She's ready to go. She is got a lot of what she wants to say. I can see it already. Atiba, one more time, tell folks where they can hear your show on WVON. Go.
Absolutely. The Buchanan and Seton Show. We air Friday nights, 9 to midnight. WVON AM 1690.
Any plans? Any ideas what you're going to be talking about? I mean, obviously, we got a lot to talk about.
Oh, certainly. Our first hour is always presidential politics, so we always go with that. And honestly, we haven't developed the last 2 hours yet. If my producer has, he hasn't told me.
Well, if folks know, I have a.
But I'm sorry. If I could just add this, what we will be asking this week is, does the Trump economy work? So we'll be challenging a lot of the things that Trump said about his economy. And is it working for Americans? And we'll dissect that this week. So, yeah, that's definitely what we'll be talking about.
Friday night, 9 until midnight. Awesome.
David Seton and Atiba Buchanan. David is more of the Biden side of the Democratic Party.
Establishment.
And Atiba is more of the Bernie side of the Democratic Party. So it's an interesting combination. And Monroe Anderson every Wednesday on the show. And he's really feeling that inner Bernie I'm
gonna win him
not
over.
To say bro anymore, but the inner Bernie in him is coming out. I see.
Yeah,
I'm gonna win him over.
You're gonna win him over. Good luck with that.
You two are still Bernie bros to me.
We're not allowed to use that term anymore. All right, very good. Thank you, Atiba. Thank you, Monroe. Got Delmarie Cobb on deck. We'll bring her on when we return.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
You've talked openly about your strong Christian faith as well as your identity as a happily married gay man. I myself am a bisexual Christian woman. How will you challenge the right's moral monopoly on Christianity to unite conservative, moderate, and liberal Christians alike behind you and your platform?
And part of where I'm coming from is a faith tradition that counsels me to be as humble as possible, that counsels me to look after those who need defending. And frankly, it couldn't be more radically different than what I see certainly in this White House, where there's a lot of chest thumping and self-aggrandizing, not to mention abusive behavior, but also a political agenda that seems to always be revolving around the idea that somehow it's too easy for poor people in this country. It's just so different than what I get when I read Scripture. And I get that one of the things about Scripture is different people see different things in it. But at the very least, we should be able to establish that God does not have a political party.
It's the butter cow, which has 9 hearts to represent the 9 essential nutrients in milk. That's right, it's made entirely out of butter, and it's a state fair tradition since at least 1922.
Hey, commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Political strategist Delmarie Cobb's in the studio. Before we bring her on, D, you got an update for me?
Absolutely, I do. We've been playing this all day throughout the show. Let's listen to it again, huh? What do you say, Ben? How about that Mayor Pete?
Okay, go on.
Huh?
All right, you going to play it?
we were talking about it.
He's claiming victory. Is he?
We were talking about it yesterday and, all day today. Mayor Pete speaking after his Iowa victory. Still a question, not sure. Here we go.
I don't know what to call it other than a victory, and a humbling one when you think about where we began.
Does the messy way that this is rolled out, does this rob you of momentum that you might otherwise have coming out of Iowa, heading into New Hampshire, where we are now?
Well, the single best piece of news our campaign got since we got into this race, it of course would have been nice to have gotten it yesterday, but I also think at the end of the day, this is about the road ahead. We have now been able to settle a lot of questions about what kind of organization we could put together and whether we could reach caucus goers, voters in many different kinds of places. But so much depends on what comes next. We got to make sure that we have a fundraising surge. It's why I'm always asking folks to go to pforamerica.com and chip in. We got to make sure that we have the right game plan and organizing game. Part of how we did this was the outreach that organizers were doing to get to know people. We got to be ready to do that, and more than anything else, continue to reach out with that message to some folks who may only now be tuning into the process. People.
Look for Ben Joravsky at the next Mayor Pete rally.
Not likely. All right.
And also, too, we're getting there, Ben. Now we've learned that we don't say Bernie Bros.
Yeah.
All right.
Not allowed to say that anymore.
All right,
You're right.
so
Steve, you were right.
Now, okay, so we're getting there. And now we're saying, what was it, Bernie Brother? I don't think we should be saying that either.
Atiba said he's a Bernie brother.
Okay.
So Atiba can say it. I'm not saying it.
Yeah, you and me? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right, very good. All right, Delmarie Cobb.
I'm not a Bernie sister.
What's that?
I'm not a Bernie sister.
Or you mean a Sanders sister? You want that alliteration? We had Jeanette Taylor in the studio, and she is a Sanders sister, and she was proclaiming it to the world. Is she your alderman, or is she south of you?
No, she's in the 20th ward.
And she's south of you. You're
I'm
third
in the
ward?
4th ward.
4th ward, or your 4th ward, if you can.
Used to be the 2nd ward.
Used to be the second.
To the 2nd ward stopped being a black ward.
That's correct. And then they made this 2nd ward an aberration
And it goes all the way. Here's the most famous black political and economic ward in the country. When you look at all the black people who came out of the second ward, including the very first alderman in 1915, Oscar DePriest, and now it's no longer a black ward.
Yeah. Well, that's because the economic and planning policies of the city of Chicago for the last 20 years has been to encourage black people to leave Chicago.
Exactly.
Okay? All right, we'll leave that alone for the moment, Delmarie. We'll avoid that issue. And you were listening, Delmarie Cobb, ladies and gentlemen, political strategist in the city of Chicago. And I should say, I put this out here right now, a very close ally of Hillary Clinton. So Hillary's been getting ripped on this show, Delmarie, I should say that, for some of her Bernie comments. But avoiding the Hillary issue for the moment, you were listening to Mayor Pete's post-election comments that Dennis just played. And I could see you wanted to say something. So say what it was that you wanted to say.
Well, you know, it was interesting. There was I don't know if it was on Jimmy Kimmel or if it was on Colbert show, but they interviewed a voter after she had caucused, and she found out that he had a same-sex partner. And she was like, what? And this is an older white woman. She's like, what? What are you saying? He's married? And so the reporter goes on to explain. She says, well, why isn't that common knowledge? And the woman says, well, it is common knowledge. And she says, can I have my vote back?
This was not comedy?
No, this was a serious voter. And so I'm saying that the people in Iowa didn't even know anything about Pete Buttigieg. They were just voting for somebody who I guess they thought was young and wasn't the same old establishment, but obviously did not know anything about him.
So do you think what went down in Iowa on Monday is a Pete Buttigieg triumph, the way he's presenting it?
No, it's an aberration. Is what it is.
Explain.
No, I mean, it's an aberration. First of all, you've got an all-white community. That's the first thing, which is crazy, that should set the momentum for the rest of the country when it's not even reflective of the rest of the country. And then you have people who, after they've spent a year down there, a year in Iowa, and you don't know who the candidates are? Mm-hmm. You don't know anything about them? What were you doing? For a year.
It's true. Well, you know, I got to tell you this, Delmarie. I try not to be dismissive or make fun of the voters. You know, they're the voters, okay? And I've been on the losing side of many more elections in Chicago than I've been on the winning side in terms of who I voted for, all right? I've lost every mayoral election from 1987 until 2000. I voted for Lori Lightfoot. Okay. So I'm not always in tune with the voters, but I'll tell you this one time, a story, an anecdote that brings it home, and no names will be mentioned. A person was watching Joe Biden give a speech at, I believe it was the 2012 Democratic Convention, and said, is that the person that Obama's running against? That person's vote counts as much as your vote, my vote, and Dennis's vote. You get what I'm saying, Delmarie?
Yeah, and that's why our candidates don't win.
What do you mean by that?
Because we know what we're talking about when we vote. And so that's why we're voting for people who we think are reflective of our values. The majority of people don't know what they're talking about when they vote. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, whatever their touchstones are, I don't know what they are sometimes. That's why they're voting. And those are the people who win. I mean, I can count on one hand. I've never had a presidential candidate, I don't think, ever win until they became the nominee. But in the primary, I don't think I've had ever had a presidential candidate to become the nominee.
I'm trying to think about that. Oh, that's right. You were with Hillary Clinton in 2008. Yeah.
except Hillary, and she was the nominee, but she didn't become the president.
But she won the election.
Yes, we know that.
I stand by that.
And she won the election against Bernie, too, in the primary when she got 4 million more votes than him.
Well, I was just dueling with Monroe, who really does not like Bernie. And I was pointing out, I'm a Bernie supporter. I put that out there right now. I have my list. And Bernie's number 1 on the list. Elizabeth Warren, number 2. And number 3, well, is Yang still in the race? All right, Yang is 3rd. But I pointed out that Bernie, like Hillary, got more votes in Iowa. He got more votes than Pete Buttigieg. And yet, by the arcane rules that govern the process in the state of Iowa, Pete Buttigieg has emerged as the quote-unquote winner. I find this utterly insane, Delmarie, and I don't believe we really have a true democracy when the loser is the winner. And I felt that way very strongly with Hillary Clinton in 2016. I still feel, when I see Donald Trump give the State of the Union speech and proclaim himself the champion of America, I'm like, it really galls me that I know and America knows he lost the 2016 election.
Well, I agree 100%. And I could go off on this and easily about Hillary and her winning and still losing, because 2016 wasn't the first time. But I'm not going to go into that, and we're not going to relitigate.
All right, let's not relitigate. Well, I think the Democrats should relitigate it. I think the Democrats should take a stand against Electoral College. They've lost twice in this century on it, and they're probably going to do a third time. If there's a chance it could happen a third time, because I don't think Donald Trump is going to win a majority of the vote in this upcoming.
And if we don't come out the way we need to come out, no, if there's not that kind of enthusiasm, the enthusiasm has to be. And believe me, if it's Bernie Sanders, I certainly will vote for him as the nominee, holding my nose. But I will vote for him because he's the nominee. Because last thing I want to do is contribute to Donald Trump winning.
All right, let me ask you this before we move away from the Bernie question, and then we'll go to the centrist question, the centrist issue in the Democratic Party. I've been, my opinion, and let's get your thoughts on this, that the centrists of the Democratic Party should drop their dream of Joe Biden. That is one thing that became apparent to me in Iowa. That campaign's going nowhere. They should drop their dream of Pete Buttigieg. He doesn't have any black support. I don't know how you can win an election in a Democratic primary without black support. Never been done before in the history. Well, maybe in 1988, but that would have been the only time. And they should rally around Mike Bloomberg. The guy's got so much money, he could really give Trump a run for his money. So if you're a centrist, I don't understand why you're not supporting Michael Bloomberg.
It's so funny. Somebody told me a story the other day about a reporter said to Mike Bloomberg, "Oh, so what are we going to have, 2 billionaires in the race?" And Bloomberg said, "Who's the other one?"
Yeah, he's trash talking, and you know that gets to Trump.
I know.
That gets to Trump.
And that's what I want to see.
So what's your thoughts about that, Bloomberg as the centrist candidate?
Well, he may very well be. I'm certainly not counting him out. He has the money to definitely get there. And if you spend enough money on the air all over the country, you're going to raise your numbers, and he's raising his numbers. And so I'm not discounting him by any means.
And what's your sense of what the black vote would go if Bloomberg's in the race? He, of course, was the supporter of stop and frisk in the city of New York, big supporter of charter schools, etc. What's your sense of how the black vote will go for Bloomberg?
Well, you see him he's on a mea culpa tour. That's
word for Pritzker.
Right. He's got enough money to be on a mea culpa tour. He's smart enough to know that he needs to be on one, unlike Pete Buttigieg, who's not smart enough to understand that he needs black people.
Well put. And your thoughts about the running mate? I've been saying this for a while. I do believe that if it's Bernie Sanders as a nominee, absolutely has to have a black woman. If it's Michael Bloomberg, absolutely has to have a black woman. And if somehow or other Joe Biden miraculously emerges from Iowa to be the candidate, he absolutely has to have a black woman. Your thoughts?
Well, black people are not tripping over Bernie Sanders either. So, yes, they have to have a black woman as far as I'm concerned. Because, and given that I have a PAC that's pro African American women, elected officials, of course I want to see a black woman. We've had a black man in the White House. We've not had a black woman. So if you're going to do something different. And given that black women turn out at 94 to 98% at every election, it's about time that you pay homage to the fact that the most loyal base of the Democratic Party is black women.
Do you have any candidates that you would like to put out there right now? Any names that you think the Democrats should seriously consider?
Well, in terms of running mates?
Yes.
I mean, you know, Kamala, certainly she was in it. And since she was in it, she raised her profile. I mean, there are others. I would rather see Stacey Abrams remain a candidate for governor. I think, you know, I would love to see her do that. She came close last time, and I would like to see her stay and run for governor of Georgia again and actually win, because I think that's historic in and of itself on another level, given the history of Georgia and black people. So, you know, I mean, there's certainly enough African American women across the country who are more than qualified to be running mates, and I think any one of them, if they become the vice president, they certainly will help to energize the base for the Democrats. And right now, we've got to think in terms of what's going to energize the base and make them turn out.
And what do you think will energize the base and make them turn out? Does it go beyond a vice presidential candidate?
Well, the issue should be enough to make you turn out. Donald Trump should be enough to make you turn out. But unfortunately, and you've heard me say this before, Ben, that the most effective weapon the Republicans have, and they're excellent at it, is voter oppression and negative campaigning. And negative campaigning stops African Americans from turning out to vote, because we just go, oh, well, you know, it's all the same. So I'm not even going to bother. I'm sick of it. It's messy. It's dirty. All of them corrupt. None of them care about me. And then we don't go anywhere. And that's the worst thing we could do. But it's what happens. We got to be realistic. And what the Democrats keep failing to understand, and I had this argument with Hillary's people in 2016 about the enthusiasm level. And I said, the thought is, for some reason, well, we have nowhere else to go. So black people ain't got nowhere else to go. So you got to vote for us. And I'm like, yeah, but we won't go anywhere. Do you understand?
Yeah. By the way, it's the same absolute argument that works for Bernie supporters as well. And I've made this point many times. The assumption is that the left wing of the Democratic Party has no choice but to follow the nominee, no matter how much of a moderate or centrist that nominee is. And I go, yeah, they have a choice. They could sit at home.
But see, that's where I have the problem.
Go.
Because, and I'm sure we've talked about this in the past, but, you know, I was there for Jesse Jackson in 1988. I was his national traveling press secretary. I sat there when his delegates wanted him to take the fight to the floor to become the vice presidential nominee. They were adamant. Let's take this to the floor. And he got all of his delegates in a room, and he said, no, we're not going to do that. You know, we're going to support the nominee, but we're going to get some things ourselves. And he's the reason 20 years later, there was a Barack Obama, because he changed the rules from winner take all, which is what it was, to a plurality of the vote. And that's how that was one of the things he did that made it possible for Barack Obama to win 20 years later. I was also in the room in 2008 when neither Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton had enough delegates to be the nominee. And Hillary brought us all in the room and said to us, and I was a delegate, and said to us, we have to support Barack Obama. And her people were like, ah.
By the way, a good portion, I can't remember the exact number, I've read, there's been studies of this, a good portion of Hillary's supporters in 2008 either voted for John McCain or did not vote at all. I could send you the study on that one. In other words, yes, you were pragmatic, and Hillary was pragmatic, but not all Hillary supporters. And I remember in particular having a vehement argument. I wrote about it for the Reader. Oh my God, with this diehard Hillary supporter, who's a man, by the way, I'll just throw that out there, loved Hillary to death. And he told me there is no way I'm voting for John McCain because Barack Obama is a product of the Chicago Democratic machine. And he was just going on. And there I was in the parking lot of a CVS drugstore on the north side of Chicago trying to, on a phone, arguing. So there was that.
But the thing is, she did it. The thing is, she did what she was supposed to do. The thing is, Jesse Jackson did what he was supposed to do. Bernie did not.
Well, Bernie did support, he did go on the campaign trail hard for Hillary in October. I remember him campaigning with Hillary on stage in Iowa, in North Carolina. I remember the write-ups. I remember Hillary saying nice things about, thank you, Senator Sanders.
And when was the convention, in August?
July.
No, July, because it was on my birthday.
It was
July.
July.
So it was July. So October, November's the election. You had since July. But it took you that long to come out the bathroom from pouting.
Okay.
You were pouting.
All right. Okay. By the way, let's go back in time. We'll leave that one alone, all right? Which is you and I are just going to have to agree to disagree on that one. Let's go back in time to 1988. Let's just take your example. What if Jesse Louis Jackson, had listened to his delegates? Now, 1988 was Mike Dukakis was the nominee.
Right.
Okay. I did not vote for him, just for the record. Voted for Jesse Louis Jackson. And his running mate, I can't believe I remember this, was Lloyd Benston. Am I correct?
Benson.
Benson. Okay, excuse me. An older white guy
from Texas,
a senator. What if Dukakis had said, no, I'm going to pick Jesse Jackson? I can't believe I'm even saying this. It's so fantastical, Delmarie. Democrats were losing their mind in 1984 and 88 that Jackson was even in a race.
Right.
What do you think the outcome would have been?
Mike Dukakis would have been the president because black people would have turned out in droves. And white people would have too, because at that time, if you remember 1988 and his speech and the fact that he had been with the farmers, in Washington, he stood with them when nobody else was standing with them. I mean, we were on the campaign trail. I'll tell you about my first day. So the first day I joined the campaign was here in Chicago. They were doing a union rally at one of the hotels. And then from there, we got on the plane, and our first stop was Texas. And we get to this stadium, and we're late, of course, and so there's only a few people left. We were told it had been filled, and now there's only a few people left. So this guy comes up to Jackson before he walks into the stadium, and it's so funny to even say this now because, especially since these Paul Bunyan, all these men are looking like Paul Bunyans with these beards now. But at that time, he looked like Paul Bunyan. And you wouldn't have wanted to see him at night. And he waited for, especially as a black person, and he waited for Jesse Jackson and said, oh, man, I just had to come say something to you. He said, because I was with you, in Selma. And so Jackson was like, oh, you were? He said, oh, thank you, brother. He said, no. I was on the other side. I was stopping you. And now I'm here with you. That was my first day on the campaign. I was in tears. I'm telling you, it was a different time. He could have done it. And Dukakis would have been the winner.
See, Delmarie, I'm listening to that story, and it just shows me the Democrats have always been wedded to conventional wisdom that has never really won it out for them, and they still stay wedded to it.
I agree.
You can't have a black guy. You can't have a woman. You can't have a lefty. It's just they always cling to conventional wisdom, and conventional wisdom, more often than not, doesn't work for the Democrats.
I agree with you 100%. I was out there. I know what the feeling was, and it was unbelievable. I've never had anything even come close to it since then.
You talk about 1988 for Jesse Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
84 was pretty intense too, but 84 was a whole interesting thing that we're in memory lane because Harold Washington and Jesse, they had rival, I don't know if you remember this, but they had rival slates of delegates. I was a Harold Washington guy, so I wasn't for Jesse Jackson in '84. I was with Harold. Wasn't that weird?
Well, I was actually in Norfolk, Virginia as a reporter. So I actually covered Jesse Jackson in Chesapeake, Virginia in 1984, never knowing in 1988 I'd be his National Traveling Press Secretary.
Well, now, this, in light of you being his national president, let's just deal with this. I've had this argument, a debate with people on this show, generally black centrists. And let's take the Bernie part out of the equation, but I'll put it in there now because I want you to concentrate on the substance of what the argument is. And so the centrists will say, well, Bernie's too radical for black people. That black people are more cautious and pragmatic and conservative. And then I always point out, Jesse Jackson's platform was Bernie before Bernie in 1988.
Oh,
pretty much everything Bernie's calling for, Jesse was calling for in 88. And I didn't see any black people complaining about that. So I don't believe that that's another myth that's put out there.
That is another myth. It has nothing to do with Bernie's platform. It has something to do with Bernie. Bernie has not had any relationship with the black community to any relevant degree. I know that people talk about, well, when he was here at the University of Chicago, he marched with King. And I always say, and he left and went to the whitest state in the Union.
Delmarie Cobb. She said she wasn't going to relitigate the Bernie thing, but I'll tell you, if I had a nickel for every time someone told me that about Bernie being in Vermont, back in 2016, I would at least have enough money to buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks. All right, we are going to take a break, and then when we come back, we'll change the conversation, go a little local. I'm really curious to hear what Delmarie Cobb has to say about Kim Foxx and the race for state's attorney, and some of the comments that came out of the Sun-Times editorial board meeting. So we'll be right back with Delmarie Cobb. Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. Chicagoland Cremation Options.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
We don't know all of the numbers, but we know this much. A campaign that started a year ago with 4 staff members, no name recognition, no money, just a big idea. A campaign that some said should have no business even making this attempt, has taken its place at the front of this race to replace the current president with a better vision for the future.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, take us home.
Delmarie Cobb in the studio getting ready for a Kim Foxx question. Before I deliver it, D, you got an update for us?
Just remember to follow us online on social media at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, on Facebook and Twitter. The Ben Joravsky Show on Instagram. Ben, how's that Instagram page looking?
Unbelievable. Hold on, another phone call.
Oh, hello?
Zuckerberg, stop calling me at the show when I'm on the air. Yeah, I know I'm killing Facebook. I'll go easy with the...
Instagram.
Well, no, wait. Facebook owns Instagram.
What? You're awful at Facebook.
I know, but I'm destroying the Facebook company by overbreak. Come on, get the joke straight, all right?
I see.
All right, it's not a great joke, but it is a joke.
All right, and shout out to everybody on the live stream chat today. You guys are awesome. Steven, KMA Barry, J. Marie, all of you. Steven, back on the live stream. He was gone for a few days. Welcome back, my friend.
Wait, Steven the one who said not to use Bernie Bro?
Yeah, he was the one who told us not to say Bernie Bro.
You're right, Steven. I sit corrected.
So why did he say that?
Do you have the quote?
I'll go scroll up here and I'll look and find it here.
You know, the reporter in me had to do the follow-up question.
That's all right. Just feel.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
There's a Bernie Bro in that Delmarie is cultivating. She's getting ready to feel the burn. It's just taking her a little.
Or the Sanders sister.
A Sanders sister, like Jeanette Taylor, the alderman to the south of her.
We have so many people on the chat here. Let's see.
Well, I could paraphrase it.
Yeah, I got it. I got it here. Hang tight. Let's see here. Stephen Boy. Oh, boy. Let's see here. Okay. Bro implies. Okay. Hold on a second. Sorry for the delay here. Bernie Bro is an anti-progressive attack, which is not founded in an empirical understanding of the Bernie camp. It's very upsetting to hear this on the show 37 times a day. Calling Bernie supporters bros erases the women and people of color who support Bernie.
And Atiba Buchanan agreed with him, and it does erase. Although, as I pointed out, I talked to one diehard Bernie supporter, a woman who said, "I'm a Bernie bro." But anyway, so he's right.
I'm glad. I didn't like it either, but it bothered me for other reasons. One, the woman thing, that was part of it. The other thing is just the appropriation of, black people, black men calling each other brothers, and now all of a sudden, every other word out of somebody's mouth who's white is bro.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah. Well, I guess I've learned this lesson. An old guy can learn a lesson that, like, what a bro is. This is something this gets to the Kim Foxx race because somebody said that Bill Conway, who's the wealthy gentleman running against Kim Foxx, is a bro. And a bro has a conventional meaning outside of a racial one that has to do with someone who's sort of like back when we would have called them jocks, I think. I'm trying to put it in a generational context that you and I would understand.
Right.
We would have called them jocks and, that kind of thing. So anyway, bro in that meaning. But anyway, Stephen, you were right. I'm wrong. I won't use it again. And if I do, Dennis will correct me.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, Robert Mueller. All right, Delmarie, no more beating around the bush, to quote Marvin Gaye. We're going to get right down to it. Kim Foxx is running for re-election. And she's dealing with the fallout from Smollettgate. We have discussed Smollettgate on the show with you.
Much to do about nothing.
And I agree with you basically on that point, although I take great delight in talking about it, I must admit. So she's being challenged by three candidates. Bill Conway, who's the young man whose father has a lot of money.
Who's going to fight for people like Candace Clark.
That is where I'm getting to. Bob Fioretti, who used to be the alderman of the 2nd Ward when it was still more or less rooted on the South Side, and Donna Moore. And so at the board meeting of the Sun-Times, Conway was taken to task the Sun-Times brought out the fact that Conway had been taken to task by the Black Caucus, the Chicago Aldermanic Black Caucus. Every now and then I agree with the Black Caucus of the City Council. Delmarie's smiling. And because Conway's been airing commercials featuring a young black woman named Candace Clark, and I'm reading from the Sun-Times, Conway pointed out that his client, Candace Clark, also charged with disorderly conduct, wasn't treated the same way that Smollett was before Clark pleaded out. Cook County Judge Mark Martin noted at a hearing that Clark's case was, quote, a lot less egregious than Mr. Smollett's case, unquote. Like Smollett, Clark was accused of filing a false police report in 2018. Her case involved allegations of check forgery. Quote, why is she being treated differently, the judge asked at the time. Fox on Tuesday said Conway exploited the Hoffman Estates woman's case for his political gain. The Black Caucus released a statement saying Conway is an opportunistic candidate who took on the Candace Clark case simply for personal gain. Instead of exploiting people of color, Conway should focus on his plans to deliver equitable justice, that is, if he has any. It's unclear up to this moment, since he spent all of his father's money on Jussie Smollett's ad. Oh, the Black Aldermanic Caucus gets a funny little dig in there. Your response to all that?
Well, the problem is that Kim is running I think, not a very good campaign. I mean, this Rose Garden approach, to me, is a failing approach. I mean, she's in a war, and she needs to get dirty. And I don't mean dirty like dirty politics. I mean, if we're gonna fight, then we're both going to get dirty, fighting, and so. But she's not doing that. Even the commercial she has now, this second commercial that she has, the first one was good. It's the intro commercial about who she is. But this second commercial, she's not running for U.S. Attorney General or Illinois Attorney General. Why are you talking about Trump or immigrants? That's not the biggest issue in the city of Chicago or Cook County. So she's got all these people around her who are from somewhere else, and they're running a national campaign. They're not running a Cook County in the mud, let's get dirty campaign. And Conway is, and he has the money, and he's using a young black woman against another black woman. And unfortunately, because she's young, she doesn't even know she's being used. Because I don't know who she has around her. But in reading the case, this is my take from it. Smollett didn't get off scot-free. He $10,000 fine, he did some community service work. But Kim probably saw this black woman, and I'm not saying Kim personally, but the office, and she could be saved. You want to do something to save her so that she doesn't ever get in trouble again. People don't go around filing false police reports if you are a good girl. As she says, I'm just an ordinary girl. I didn't do nothing. Well, you filed a false police report. That is something. And part of what the punishment was a fine, court supervision, and get a job. What's wrong with that? If that's going to keep you out of trouble, if that's going to make sure you don't ever do this again, be grateful. You didn't get jail time. So what is the problem? That you got punished at all? So you file a police report, false police report, and there should be no punishment? Just a pat on the wrist? I have a problem with that. And she is being used. But Kim is not fighting.
Follow that up. What, in your humble opinion, should Kim Foxx be doing to show the fighting spirit? What should she be doing?
Talk about what you've done. Talk about the people who have benefited from what you've done. All the people you got out of jail for false imprisonment, police misconduct, or for marijuana charges. All of those things, the things that don't matter in the big scheme of things, but our community is always paying the price. Talk about that. Talk about that's how you got in, because these same people who are shouting about her being soft on crime, who look like Bill Conway, because they took a cell phone off their table at the restaurant, or they took a backpack when they were on the train or something like that. And yes, those are problems. But black folks are being killed. Black folks are under siege. And where were any of these people when Anita Alvarez and the police were letting police get off with murdering black people, and they weren't saying a word? Where was the outrage then? But the outrage now is about a cell phone being taken off a table while you're downtown because you think you shouldn't be inconvenienced. That's what she needs to talk about.
The cell phone on the table. I'm with you 100%.
No,
just
but
don't
I'm
know
saying,
to.
people are saying she's soft on crime because they're now having those kinds of petty crimes.
I got you.
And they're being inconvenienced.
Mm-hmm.
Because people who I know who were in the South Loop or in other white communities said that they had a very hard time getting signatures for Kim from white people because they said she was soft on crime.
I see. I got you. Okay. All right. The crime being like a petty theft case.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're not condoning stealing cell phones here. That's not the point.
But when my community's being killed, I do have a problem with that.
What do you think about if she pointed out exactly who was against her? You talk about when you said, I know dirty was in quotes. So effectively, Conway, Moore, and Bob Fioretti as well is also playing this card, that she's soft on crime, that she's letting perpetrators out, that Chicago is a more dangerous place, or Cook County is a more dangerous place. This is their argument because of her. So they're going at her at that.
More dangerous than what? Than what it was a couple of years ago? More dangerous than that? More dangerous than 600 people being killed just a couple of years ago? More dangerous than the $1 billion we've spent since 2014 on police misconduct? I'm sorry, I missed the point.
So she should she'd probably, if she take a page from Trump, take credit for declining murders in Chicago.
Exactly.
Everybody else is taking credit for them.
Exactly. And take credit for the fact that, not putting these people in jail means we're not paying for them when they're sitting up there for petty thefts and other misdemeanor crimes. And we're paying for them till they get to court. And sometimes they're in jail for a year before they even get to court because they don't have the money for bail. And how does that help you when you lose your job or, some of these young people may have had jobs, but you're not going to have a job if you're in jail. Their families don't have the money. And no, I'm not condoning this because I don't think any of it's right. And I think they should be punished. But the punishment should be commensurate with the crime. And that's what Kim came in to do, level the playing field. And I just have a problem with where was the outrage when black people were being mistreated? Where was the outrage when when John Burge was around? Or Nita Alvarez? And again, nobody was upset about that videotape of Laquan McDonald except the community. The community is the reason that tape came to light, not the people in power. They were doing everything they could to bury it. So, let's talk about outrage. Everybody says, I'm with you, I'm with you, I'm with you, but the only people who are ever marching and in the dirt and in the trenches are us. We're always by ourselves, but everybody's on the sidelines, I'm with you.
Delmarie, you don't even, we go back, this is my favorite example to use to contrast the outrage over Smollett is the lack of, lack of opposition and outrage to the Cook County State's Attorney's handling of the Daley nephew who killed a kid on the Gold Coast. This is not even a racial issue. This is pure politics, Delmarie Cobb. The connections suddenly... I think they are harder on Jussie Smollett than they were on the Daley nephew. It took sometimes 10 years of writing stories, I think, or something like that before they prosecuted.
Exactly.
Man, wouldn't you love to see Kim Foxx come out with a commercial like that?
Right.
Hey, where was the outrage over the Daley nephew?
And as I said, 16 shots versus 16 counts. So we're going to be mad at Jussie Smollett for 16 counts, but we're going to be okay with Rahm Emanuel and 16 shots.
I think we're going to have Kim Foxx as a guest on the show in a couple weeks. You mind if I play back what you just said? You okay with that?
I'm fine.
Okay, we're going to play. Hey, Kim, this is advice from Delmarie Cobb, who's been around the block a few times. We'll close with this. I see a correlation. So Bob Conway is using this young woman, Candace Clark, in his commercials. I know you didn't watch the Super Bowl, but John Trump used a woman named Alice Marie Johnson in his commercial. Very similar. Alice Marie Johnson is a black woman from Tennessee who was facing a life imprisonment for drug trafficking charges. Kim Kardashian urged Donald Trump to take up the case, and he commuted the sentence. And the commercial that ran, the 30-second spot that ran during the Super Bowl, concluded with Alice Marie Johnson saying, "Thank you, Donald John Trump." And sort of comparable, don't you agree?
No, I do agree. And, it would be fine. Everybody can find us when they need us, but they can never find us once they get where they need to be. And that's what I have such a problem with. Even during these presidential elections, everybody knows that the vote is with the black community. No Democrat can win without the black vote. No Democrat.
That's why I say, Delmarie Cobb, they should have a black woman as a running mate. We'll leave it there. We'll close out the show with that. And Bernie Sanders, why don't you give Delmarie Cobb a call, huh? Let's just make peace from 2016. All right, Bernie Sanders, if you're listening. Delmarie Cobb, thank you very much for coming on. Regular on the show as long as I've had a show, and I appreciate all the support you've given me. Delmarie Cobb was a guest. Atiba Buchanan was a guest. And, of course, the legendary Monroe Anderson was a guest. Comes on the show every Wednesday. And, of course, as Delmarie can tell you, the man, the myth, the legend, behind the board, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. Back home in Alton, Delmarie, I don't know if you knew this, they call him White Lightning. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. Take care, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. Downloaders, we live stream this program. It's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel. You join on YouTube and you can join the live stream chat if you dare. It's a good time. We'll see you tomorrow.
Big problems become big problems when you let small problems sit.